Tonight, a woman will realize that the marriage she dedicated her life to protecting was nothing but a cruel deception. Lena Vale sat in the darkness, watching her husband throw the divorce papers onto the table as if their 7 years of marriage were worthless. He had found a woman richer, more beautiful, more powerful. But Adrian Cross had no idea. The woman he had just discarded was the daughter of the city's most dangerous mafia boss, and tonight she would call home. Follow this story to the end, like and comment with the city you're starting from, so I know how far this story has come. The rain came down like bullets against the windows of 47 Maple Grove Drive. Each drop hammered the glass with a violence that matched the pounding in Lena's chest as she sat alone at the dining table, staring at the chocolate cake she'd spent 3 hours baking that afternoon. 7 candles, 7 years. The wax had melted into twisted shapes, pooling around the bases like little gravestones marking the death of something she'd been too stupid to see was already rotting. The clock on the wall read 12:43 a.m. Adrian was 4 hours late. She'd stopped calling after the 6th attempt went straight to voicemail, stopped texting after the 10th message sat there on read, unanswered, mocking her with those 2 little blue check marks that confirmed he'd seen her words and decided they weren't worth responding to. Her fingers had gone numb from gripping her phone too hard, nails digging crescents into her palms until she'd finally set it face down on the table and forced herself to just sit there, waiting, like she always did. The house smelled like chocolate and failure. She'd decorated. God, she'd actually decorated. Streamers hung from the ceiling in the living room, sagging now with humidity from the storm outside. She'd bought his favorite wine, the expensive Bordeaux he always ordered at restaurants when he wanted to impress clients. She'd worn the red dress he'd once told her looked good on her, back when he still noticed what she wore, back when he still looked at her like she was a person instead of a piece of furniture that came with the mortgage. Lena reached out and touched one of the melted candles, the wax still warm enough to stick to her fingertip. She didn't pull away, just let it burn there, a tiny point of pain to remind her she could still feel something. The front door opened with a bang that made her flinch. Adrian stumbled in, rain-soaked and reeking. The smell hit her before he even closed the door. Expensive whiskey, cigarette smoke, and something else. Perfume. Not hers. Something floral and cloying that clung to his collar like a signature. He didn't look at her, just kicked off his shoes in the entryway, leaving them in a puddle of rainwater, and shrugged out of his coat. "You're still up?" His voice was flat. Not a question. Not an apology. Just a statement of fact, delivered with the same tone he might use to comment on the weather. Lena's throat was so tight, she could barely breathe. "It's our anniversary." "Yeah." He walked past her into the kitchen, opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, didn't acknowledge the cake, didn't acknowledge the decorations, didn't acknowledge the fact that she'd been sitting there alone for 4 goddamn hours waiting for him. "I know." "Adrian, I'm tired, Lena." He popped the cap off the beer bottle and took a long drink, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were cold, distant, like he was looking at a stranger he'd met once at a party and couldn't quite place. She stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. "Where were you?" "Work dinner. Ran late." "Until almost 1 in the morning?" "Yeah." He took another swig of beer. "That's what happens when you're trying to close a deal worth 7 figures, Lena. Some of us have actual careers." The words hit like a slap. She felt her face go hot, her hands trembling at her sides. 7 years of this. 7 years of being made to feel small, of apologizing for existing, of shrinking herself down into something palatable so he could feel bigger standing next to her. "I made dinner," she said quietly. "I waited for you. I wasn't hungry. I baked a cake." "I can see that." He glanced at the table, his expression bored. "Looks like it melted." Something cracked inside her chest. Not her heart breaking. That had happened so many times over the past few years that she'd stopped counting. This was different. This was the sound of something harder, something sharp, the part of her that had been holding everything together finally snapping under the weight. "Who is she?" Adrian's hand paused halfway to his mouth, the beer bottle frozen in midair. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance at being caught. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold indifference he'd perfected over the years. "What are you talking about?" I can smell her perfume on you, Adrian. I'm not an idiot. He set the beer down on the counter with a sharp click. You want to do this now? Really? Do what? Ask my husband where he's been on our anniversary? Ask him why he stinks like another woman? Her voice was rising now, cracking at the edges. Yeah, Adrian, I want to do this now. He laughed, actually laughed. It was a bitter, humorless sound that made her stomach turn. You know what your problem is, Lena? You're suffocating. You've always been suffocating. I'm suffocating? Yeah, this... He gestured vaguely at the decorations, the cake, her. It's too much. It's always too much with you. I can't breathe in this house. Lena felt like she'd been punched, like all the air had been sucked out of the room and she was gasping, drowning, trying to make sense of words that didn't make sense. I'm your wife. I know. He ran a hand through his wet hair, water droplets scattering across the kitchen tile. That's the problem. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, Lena stood frozen in the middle of their kitchen, watching her husband's face and realizing with sudden, horrible clarity that this moment had been coming for a long time. She'd just been too afraid to see it. Adrian walked past her into the living room. She heard him rummaging through something, papers rustling. When he came back, he was holding a manila envelope. He dropped it on the table next to the ruined cake. What is this? Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. Divorce papers. The world tilted. Lena stared at the envelope, at the official-looking return address printed in the corner, at the way it sat there so casually next to the cake she'd spent hours baking. Her vision blurred. She couldn't tell if it was tears or shock or both. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? Adrian's voice was flat, matter of fact, like he was discussing a business transaction instead of dismantling 7 years of marriage. I already signed them. You just need to sign your half and we can get this over with. Get this over with. She repeated the words slowly, testing them in her mouth. They tasted like ash. Our marriage. You want to get it over with. Yeah. He took another drink of beer. Look, this hasn't been working for a while. You know it. I know it. We're done, Lena. Who is she? The question came out as a whisper. Adrian hesitated, just for a moment, then he shrugged, like it didn't matter, like none of this mattered. Her name's Celeste Whitmore. We've been seeing each other for about 8 months. 8 months. 8 months. Lena's knees went weak. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself, her fingernails scraping against the wood. 8 months? Yeah. You've been cheating on me for 8 months and you're telling me now? On our anniversary? I wasn't going to tell you tonight, but... He gestured at the house, at her, at everything. You made this whole thing with the cake and the decorations, and I can't do this anymore, Lena. I can't pretend. Celeste Whitmore. The name felt familiar. Lena's brain was moving too slowly, trying to catch up, trying to make sense of anything. The Whitmore family? Yeah. For the first time that night, something like excitement crept into Adrian's voice. Richard Whitmore's daughter. We met at a charity event last spring and we just connected, you know? She gets me. She understands ambition. Richard Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men on the East Coast. Real estate, politics, the kind of money that bought power, influence, access to rooms Lena had never even known existed. And Adrian had been sleeping with his daughter for 8 months. You're leaving me for a rich girl. Her voice sounded hollow. That's what this is about. Money. It's not about money, but the way he said it, the defensive edge that crept into his tone, told her everything she needed to know. It's about building a future with someone who actually has something to offer. Celeste has connections, Lena. Her family can open doors for me that you never could. There it was. The truth he'd been dancing around for years. She wasn't enough. Would never be enough. Because she was just Lena, the quiet housewife who'd given up everything to support his career, who'd moved cities when he got promotions, who'd smiled and played hostess at his company events, who'd made herself smaller and smaller until she'd almost disappeared entirely. And it still wasn't enough. I want you out by the end of the week, Adrian said. The house is in my name. You can take whatever's yours, but I'm not fighting about furniture or any of that petty shit. Just sign the papers and we can both move on. He set his empty beer bottle on the counter and walked toward the stairs. actually walked away. Like they were done here. Like he'd just dropped a bomb in the middle of her life and now he was going to bed. Adrian? He paused on the bottom step, not turning around. Lena's hands were shaking so hard she had to clench them into fists to make it stop. Does she know? Does she know what? Does Celeste know who I am? What I was before I met you? Now he turned, slowly. There was confusion on his face and something else. Uncertainty. What are you talking about? Lena felt something cold settle into her chest. Something that had been sleeping for 7 years, buried beneath layers of good behavior and careful silence and desperate attempts to be normal. It stirred now, stretching, waking up. Nothing. She picked up the envelope, her fingers steady now. Go to bed, Adrian. He stared at her for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out if she was going to cry or scream or beg. When she did none of those things, just stood there holding the divorce papers with a calm that was far more terrifying than tears, he shook his head and walked upstairs. Lena listened to his footsteps, the bedroom door closing, the house settling into silence again except for the rain. She looked down at this envelope in her hands, then at the cake, then at the decorations she'd hung with such stupid, pathetic hope just a few hours ago. 7 years. She'd spent 7 years pretending to be someone she wasn't. Playing house, playing normal, playing safe. And for what? So some mediocre man could throw her away the moment someone shinier came along? Lena walked to the living room window and stared out at the rain-soaked street. The neighborhood was dark, peaceful, manicured lawns and two-car garages, and the kind of quiet suburban life she'd convinced herself she wanted. She'd been lying, to Adrian, to herself, to everyone. Her phone was still sitting on the dining table. She picked it up, the screen illuminating her face in the darkness. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, calm, like they belonged to someone else entirely. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she'd saved years ago under a fake listing. Mike, plumber. There was no Mike. There had never been a plumber. Lena hit call and lifted the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She almost hung up. Almost convinced herself this was insane, that she should just sign the papers and move on like Adrian wanted, disappear quietly into whatever small life was waiting for her on the other side of this disaster. Then someone answered. Hello? The voice was deep, familiar. It sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with memory. Dante. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. It's me. Silence. Long enough that she thought maybe he'd hung up. Then, Lena? Yeah. Jesus Christ. She could hear him moving, the rustle of fabric like he was sitting up. It's been 7 years. 7 years. He let out a breath. I didn't think you'd ever call. I didn't think I would either. Another pause. She could picture him on the other end of the line, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of face that made people nervous, and the kind of eyes that made them tell the truth, whether they wanted to or not. Dante Moretti, the man she'd been engaged to before she ran away to play pretend with Adrian Cross. Why are you calling, Lena? She looked around the house one more time, at the life she'd built from nothing but hope and delusion, at the decorations that now looked like the saddest thing in the world, at the divorce papers sitting on the table like a tombstone. I'm ready to come home. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. 7 years ago, she'd walked away from the Moretti family, walked away from her father, from the empire he'd built, from the bloodline she'd been born into. She'd thought she was choosing freedom, love, a normal life. She'd been wrong. Where are you? Dante's voice had changed, sharp now, focused. She gave him the address. Don't move, I'm sending cars. Dante. 1 hour, Lena, sit tight. The line went dead. Lena set the phone down and walked back to the window. The rain was starting to ease up, turning from a downpour to a steady drizzle. In the distance, she could see the city lights glowing against the clouds. Somewhere out there, wheels were already turning. Phones were ringing. Men were getting dressed and loading into cars and heading toward this quiet suburban street where nothing interesting ever happened. She should have been afraid, should have been second-guessing herself, should have been wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But all she felt was calm. Lena went upstairs quietly. Adrian was already asleep, snoring softly in their bed. She stood in the doorway of their bedroom for a long moment, looking at him. This man she'd loved. This man she'd shrunk herself for. This man who'd just tossed her aside like garbage. He had no idea what was coming. She packed a single bag. Not much. She didn't need much. Most of the things in this house belonged to the version of herself she was leaving behind anyway. The good wife. The quiet woman. The one who apologized for existing. That woman was dead now. By the time she came back downstairs with her bag, exactly 53 minutes had passed. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat at the dining table, divorce papers spread in front of her. She didn't sign them, just stared at Adrian's signature, at the casual way he'd signed away their marriage like it meant nothing. At 58 minutes, headlights appeared at the end of the street. Not one car. 3. Big black SUVs with tinted windows, rolling down Maple Grove Drive like sharks cruising through shallow water. They moved slowly, deliberately, pulling up in front of the house in a formation that blocked the entire street. Lena stood up, grabbed her bag, looked one last time at the chocolate cake, the melted candles, the divorce papers. Then she walked out the front door. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving everything wet and glistening under the streetlights. The SUVs idled at the curb, engines rumbling. As Lena stepped off the porch, the back door of the middle vehicle opened. Dante Moretti stepped out. He looked exactly the same. Maybe a little older, a few more lines around his eyes, but still that same commanding presence that made everyone in a room take notice. He was wearing all black, suit, shirt, tie. His dark hair was slicked back, rain misting his shoulders. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Relief. Recognition. Something deeper that she didn't want to name. Lena. He said her name like a prayer, like an apology, like a promise. She walked toward him, her bag in one hand, divorce papers in the other. The men standing by the other vehicles watched her approach with expressions that ranged from curious to calculating. She recognized a few faces. Tony, Marco, men who'd worked for her father since before she was born. Dante met her halfway up the sidewalk. Up close, she could see the concern in his eyes, the way he was taking in every detail of her appearance like he was checking for injuries. "You okay?" His voice was low. Just for her. "Not yet." She held up the divorce papers. "But I will be." He glanced at the papers, then at the house behind her. "The husband?" "Asleep." "You want me to wake him up?" There was something dangerous in the way he asked it. Lena knew exactly what he was offering. One word from her and Adrian Cross would wake up to a nightmare he couldn't imagine. But that wasn't the revenge she wanted. No. She looked back at the house one last time. "Let him sleep. He'll figure it out in the morning." Dante studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded and gestured toward the SUV. "Let's go home." "Home." The words settled into her chest like an anchor, like gravity pulling her back to something she'd been fighting against for 7 years. Lena let Dante guide her to the vehicle. He opened the door for her, and she slid into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and cologne and money. Dante climbed in beside her, and the door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a cell door locking, or maybe like a cage door opening. The convoy started moving. Lena watched through the window as her house, Adrian's house, disappeared behind them. 7 years of her life reduced to a shrinking point in the rearview mirror. "You want to tell me what happened?" Dante asked. Lena leaned back against the seat and closed her eyes. "He left me for someone richer. Stupid man." "Yeah." She opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him. "He doesn't know who I am, who I was." "You told him you were someone else?" "I told him I was nobody." She laughed, but it came out bitter. Lena Vale, no family, no history, just a regular girl from nowhere. And he believed it. He wanted to believe it, made it easier for him to feel superior. She turned the divorce papers over in her hands. His new fiancée is Celeste Whitmore, Richard Whitmore's daughter. Dante went very still beside her. "Whitmore." "Yeah. Richard Whitmore, who's currently trying to develop that waterfront property downtown?" "I assume so." Dante pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. Within seconds, he was scrolling through what looked like financial documents, his expression hardening with each line he read. "Did you know," he said slowly, That Richard Whitmore's development project needs approval from the City Planning Commission? And that 3 members of that commission are in our pocket? Lena turned to look at him. No. Also, his financing is coming from Mitchell Bank, which recently merged with Harbor Trust, which we own 40% of. Dante's smile was sharp enough to cut. Your ex-husband picked the wrong enemy, Lena. He doesn't know we're enemies. He will. The city lights grew closer. They were leaving the suburbs behind, heading into downtown where the buildings got taller and the streets got meaner, and the real power lived in shadows between the law. Lena felt something stirring in her chest again. That cold, sharp thing that had woken up when Adrian dropped the divorce papers on the table. It stretched further now, unfurling like wings. When we get there, Dante said quietly, your father's going to want to see you. I know. He's been waiting 7 years for you to come home. I know that too. Lena. Dante reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused. You don't have to do this. I can set you up somewhere safe, different city, new name. You can disappear again if you want. She looked down at their hands, then up at his face. And if I don't want to disappear, then you stay. His grip tightened slightly. And you take back everything you walked away from. The SUV pulled off the highway and into a neighborhood Lena recognized. Old money. Historic mansions hidden behind iron gates and ancient trees. They turned down a private drive, and suddenly they were there. The Moretti estate. It looked exactly the same. The sprawling mansion, the manicured grounds, the fountain in the center of the circular drive. The house was lit up like Christmas, every window glowing against the night sky. Men in suits stood at attention as the convoy pulled through the gates. Lena counted at least a dozen guards visible from the driveway alone. There would be more inside. There were always more inside. The vehicles stopped in front of the main entrance. Dante got out first and offered her his hand. Lena took it and stepped out into the cool night air. The front door opened. Vincent Moretti stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm light of the foyer. He was older now, grayer, more weathered, but still standing tall, still commanding, still the kind of man who could silence a room with a glance. When he saw Lena, his expression cracked. Baby girl. It was the same thing he'd called her when she was 5 years old, and he'd taught her to play chess. The same thing he'd called her when she was 16, and she'd begged him to let her go to public school instead of private tutors. The same thing he'd called her the night she told him she was leaving. Lena's throat closed up. All that cold, hard calm she'd built up in Adrian's house started to crumble at the edges. She walked up the steps. Vincent met her halfway and pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home and drowning all at once. I'm sorry, she whispered against his shoulder. I'm sorry, Dad. Shh. He held her tighter. You're home now. That's all that matters. Behind them, Dante was giving orders to the men, sending them back to their posts. The other vehicles were pulling away. Normal estate operations resuming like nothing had happened, but everything had happened. Vincent pulled back and held Lena at arm's length, studying her face. You hungry? Maria made your favorite pasta. She makes it every Sunday, just in case. Lena's eyes burned. Every Sunday? Every Sunday for 7 years. Vincent smiled, but there was pain behind it. She never stopped believing you'd come back. They went inside. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes and home. Lena had forgotten how much she'd missed that smell, how much she'd missed the sound of her shoes on marble floors, how much she'd missed the weight of history in these walls. Maria came rushing out of the kitchen, her face streaking with tears. She grabbed Lena and held on like she was afraid she'd disappear again. My girl, my sweet girl. They fed her. It was past 2 a.m, but they sat in the dining room, and Maria brought out pasta and bread and wine, and everyone pretended it was perfectly normal to have a feast at this hour. Vincent sat at the head of the table. Dante sat across from Lena. A few of the senior men filtered in and out, offering quiet welcomes. Nobody asked her where she'd been. Nobody asked her why she'd come back. They just made room for her at the table like she'd never left. It wasn't until the food was cleared and the wine was gone, and Maria had finally stopped fussing and gone to bed, that Vincent looked at his daughter with serious eyes and said, Tell me what happened. So she did. She told him about Adrian, about the 7 years of making herself small, about coming home to divorce papers and another woman's perfume. about the way he'd thrown away their marriage like garbage. She told him about Celeste Whitmore. Vincent listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers under his chin. "What do you want?" he asked simply. Lena thought about it, really thought about it. What did she want? Revenge? Justice? To make Adrian hurt the way he'd hurt her? No, she wanted something bigger than that. "I want to stop being nobody," she said finally. "I want to remember who I am." Vincent smiled. It was a dangerous smile, a proud smile. "Then welcome home, Lena Moretti." Across the table, Dante raised his wine glass. "Welcome home." Lena picked up her own glass and felt the weight of it. The crystal was heavy, real, substantial, like her name, like her bloodline, like everything she'd tried so hard to leave behind. She took a drink and felt the wine burn down her throat. Outside the windows, the city sprawled in the distance. Somewhere out there, Adrian was sleeping peacefully in their bed, having no idea that the woman he'd divorced tonight had just walked back into an empire, having no idea that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, having no idea that the quiet housewife he'd thrown away was actually the heir to one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast, and that by morning, his perfect new life with Celeste Whitmore would begin to unravel in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Lena set down her glass and looked at her father. "I want to start tomorrow." "Tomorrow you rest," Vincent said firmly. "Day after tomorrow, we'll start putting you back together." "No," she shook her head. "Tomorrow. I've wasted enough time." Vincent and Dante exchanged a look. Then Vincent nodded slowly. "All right, tomorrow. What's first?" "First?" Dante leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "First, we remind this city who you are." Lena felt that cold, sharp thing in her chest unfurl completely. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even revenge. It was something simpler and far more dangerous. It was power. And for the first time in 7 years, she wasn't afraid of it. She was hungry for it. Lena woke up in her childhood bedroom with sunlight cutting through the curtains like a knife. For 3 seconds, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The divorce papers, the phone call, the convoy of black SUVs rolling down Maple Grove Drive like a funeral procession for her old life. She sat up and looked around. Everything was exactly how she'd left it 7 years ago. The 4-poster bed with its dark wood frame, the antique dresser her mother had picked out before she died, the bookshelf still full of novels she'd read as a teenager, trying to understand a world beyond these walls. Even the framed photographs on the nightstand were the same. Her and Vincent at her high school graduation, her and Dante at some family dinner, her mother's face frozen in time before the cancer took her. Someone had been dusting, keeping it ready, like they'd known she'd come back eventually. Lena's throat went tight. She pushed the feeling down and got out of bed. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. She picked it up and saw 17 missed calls from Adrian, 12 text messages, 3 voicemails. She didn't open any of them, just stared at his name on the screen until it stopped meaning anything. There was a knock on the door. "Come in." Maria pushed through carrying a tray loaded with coffee, eggs, toast, fruit. Her face lit up when she saw Lena awake. "Good, good. You need to eat. You're too skinny." "I'm not too skinny." Maria set the tray down on the desk and started fussing with pillows, fluffing them like Lena was some kind of invalid. "That man didn't feed you right. I could tell when I saw you last night." Lena sat back down on the bed and accepted the coffee Maria pressed into her hands. It was perfect. Strong and black with just enough sugar to cut the bitterness. Exactly how she used to drink it before Adrian convinced her to switch to tea because coffee gave her bad breath. She took a sip and felt something loosen in her chest. "Your father wants to see you at 10, Maria said. "In his office. He has plans." "What kind of plans?" Maria's expression went carefully neutral. "The kind you discuss in offices, not kitchens." Right, the family business, the empire. The world Lena had walked away from because she'd been stupid enough to think love was more important than power. She drank her coffee and ate mechanically while Maria bustled around the room, pulling clothes from the closet, laying out options on the bed. Black pants, black shirt, black blazer. The uniform of the Moretti family. "I don't know if those still fit," Lena said. "They'll fit." Maria held up the pants, eyeing them critically. "And if they don't, we have a tailor on call. He can be here in 20 minutes. Lena showered in the ensuite bathroom, letting the hot water beat against her shoulders until her skin turned pink. When she got out and wiped the steam from the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her face looked harder, sharper. The softness she'd cultivated for Adrian was already starting to crack away, revealing the bones underneath. The clothes fit. Barely. She'd lost weight over the years, trying to maintain the figure Adrian preferred. But Maria was right. She was too thin now. The pants hung loose on her hips. The blazer gaped at the shoulders. She looked like she was wearing someone else's skin. "Better," Maria said when Lena emerged. Then she stepped forward and fixed Lena's collar, smoothing down the fabric with maternal efficiency. "Now you look like yourself again." At exactly 10 o'clock, Lena walked down the grand staircase and through the halls toward her father's office. The house was busy. Men in suits moving purposefully through rooms, phones ringing in distant offices, the low murmur of business being conducted behind closed doors. It felt like a hive. Organized chaos held together by Vincent's iron will. She reached the office and knocked. "Come." Vincent sat behind a massive oak desk that had belonged to his father and his father before that. The morning light streamed through the windows behind him, turning him into a silhouette. Dante stood near the window, arms crossed, wearing another black suit that probably cost more than Adrian's car. Both men looked up when she entered. "Sit," Vincent said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Lena sat. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face blank. Neutral. The way she'd been taught before she forgot all her training to play housewife. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he slid a folder across the desk. Adrian Marcus Cross. Born 1989 in Hartford, Connecticut. Business degree from Boston University. Currently VP of Development at Hartman & Associates, commercial real estate firm. Salary $140,000 a year plus bonuses. Married 7 years ago to Lena Vale. No children, no prenup. Vincent tapped the folder. Currently engaged to Celeste Whitmore, though the engagement hasn't been publicly announced yet. Lena opened the folder. Inside were photographs of Adrian, leaving his office, getting into his car, having lunch with a blonde woman who had to be Celeste. There were financial documents, employment records, credit reports. Her father had compiled an entire dossier overnight. "How did you—" "We have people everywhere, baby girl. You know that." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "The question is, what do you want to do with this information?" Lena flipped through the pages slowly. There was Adrian's whole life laid out in black and white. His mediocre career, his mounting debt, his desperate attempts to climb a social ladder that would never accept him without Celeste's connections. "He's broke," she said. "Not broke, but leveraged. He's been living beyond his means for years, probably trying to impress the Whitmore family." Dante moved away from the window and perched on the edge of Vincent's desk. "His car is leased. The house has a second mortgage he took out last year. His credit cards are maxed. He's one bad quarter away from bankruptcy. And he thought marrying Celeste would fix all that." "Yeah." Dante's smile was cold. "He thought he was marrying into money. Instead, he's marrying into a family that will chew him up and spit him out the second he stops being useful." Lena looked at the photograph of Adrian and Celeste having lunch together. They were holding hands across the table, smiling. Celeste was beautiful, blonde, polished, expensive-looking. The kind of woman who'd never had to make herself smaller for anyone. "Tell me about Richard Whitmore," Lena said. Vincent and Dante exchanged a glance. Then Vincent pulled out another folder. Richard Whitmore, 62 years old, real estate developer, major political donor, sits on half a dozen corporate boards. He's been trying to develop the waterfront district for 3 years, but keeps getting blocked by environmental regulations and neighborhood associations. Vincent opened the folder and spread out documents. He needs approval from the City Planning Commission to move forward. 3 of the 5 commissioners are in our pocket. So you could kill his project. We could, but that's not the interesting part. Dante leaned forward. The interesting part is that Whitmore's financing comes from Mitchell Bank, which merged with Harbor Trust last year. We own 40% of Harbor Trust through a shell corporation, which means you could pull his funding. Exactly. Dante's eyes glinted. But here's where it gets better. Whitmore's been courting investors for months, promising them the waterfront project is a sure thing. If that project falls apart, he doesn't just lose money, he loses face, credibility, Power. Lena set down the photograph and looked at her father. You want to use me to destroy him. No. Vincent's voice was firm. I want to give you the tools to destroy him yourself, if that's what you want. And if I just wanted the divorce to go through quietly, then we'll make that happen too. Vincent folded his hands on the desk. You're my daughter, Lena. Not a weapon, not a tool. If you want to walk away from all of this again, I'll respect that choice. Would he? Lena searched his face for signs of manipulation or strategy, but all she saw was tired sincerity. Her father was getting old. The lines around his eyes were deeper. His hands had a slight tremor he probably thought no one noticed. I don't want to walk away, she said quietly. Then what do you want? What did she want? Revenge felt too simple, too small. Adrian had hurt her, yes, but destroying him wouldn't undo 7 years of her life, wouldn't give her back the time she'd wasted making herself invisible. I want him to understand, she said finally. I want him to know what he threw away. Vincent smiled. That we can arrange. Over the next 3 hours, they built a plan. Not a revenge plot, something more surgical, more permanent. Vincent and Dante laid out the Moretti family's various holdings and connections like puzzle pieces on a table, showing Lena all the places where her old life and Adrian's new life intersected. The planning commission that could block Whitmore's development, the bank that held his financing, the business networks where reputation mattered more than money, the social circles where one wrong move could turn you from insider to pariah overnight. We don't have to do anything dramatic, Dante explained, spreading out a map of the city marked with color-coded pins. We just have to remove support. Let nature take its course. Remove support how? The commissioners who were planning to vote in favor of Whitmore's project suddenly have concerns about environmental impact. The bank gets nervous about lending to a project with uncertain approval. Investors start hearing rumors that Whitmore promised more than he can deliver. Dante tapped various pins on the map. Everything falls apart slowly, quietly. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's too late to stop it. Lena studied the map. Red pins for Moretti Holdings, blue pins for Whitmore interests, green pins for neutral territory. The city was a chessboard, and her father had been playing this game for 40 years. What about Celeste? She asked. What about her? She's not the enemy here. She doesn't know what Adrian did to me. She probably doesn't even know I exist. Vincent tilted his head, considering. You want to warn her? No, but I don't want to punish her for being lied to either. Lena traced a line on the map from the Whitmore estate to downtown. Adrian's the one who cheated. Adrian's the one who destroyed our marriage. Celeste is just collateral damage. Noble, Dante said, but in this world, collateral damage happens. Not if I can help it. Dante looked at Vincent, who shrugged. It's her call. Fine. Dante pulled out his phone and started typing. I'll have someone dig deeper into the relationship. Figure out how much Celeste knows, if she's complicit or just ignorant. Lena stood up and walked to the window. From Vincent's office on the 3rd floor, she could see most of the estate grounds. The gardens, the pool, the guest house where visiting associates stayed when they were conducting business. Beyond the walls, the city sprawled out in all directions. Somewhere out there, Adrian was probably at work, sitting in meetings, making phone calls, planning his future with Celeste, having no idea that the foundation of his new life was built on sand and lies. There's something else, Vincent said behind her. Something you need to know before we move forward. Lena turned around. Her father's expression had gone serious, darker. When you left 7 years ago, you didn't just leave me. You left the family, the organization. People felt betrayed, especially the old guard. They saw you as Vincent Moretti's daughter who spit on everything we built. I know. Do you? Because some of those men are still here, still working for me. And they're going to have opinions about you coming back. Dante cleared his throat. What your father's trying to say is that you're going to have to prove yourself. Show them you're not going to run away again the first time things get hard. How do I prove that? By being visible, by taking an active role in the family business, by showing everyone that you're serious about being here. Vincent stood up and came around the desk. I'm not getting any younger, Lena. In a few years, someone's going to have to take over. And I'd like it to be you. The words hit like a hammer. Me? You and Dante together. the way it was always supposed to be before you left. Lena looked at Dante, who was carefully studying his phone like the screen contained the secrets of the universe. His jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid. "We need to talk about that," she said. "About what happened before I left. Later." Vincent waved his hand dismissively. "First, you need to make an appearance. Remind people who you are. We're having a business dinner tonight at Salvatore's. All the senior family members will be there. Some associates from Brooklyn and Jersey. It's the perfect opportunity." "Tonight?" "No time like the present." Lena's stomach clenched. She'd been back less than 24 hours and already she was being thrown into the deep end. "I don't—" "You'll be fine." Vincent squeezed her shoulder. "You're a Moretti. This is in your blood." After the meeting, Dante caught up with her in the hallway. "Hey, wait!" Lena stopped but didn't turn around. She could feel him behind her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn 7 years ago. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Define okay?" "Lena, I'm fine, Dante." She turned to face him. "I'm back. I'm dealing with it. Isn't that what everyone wanted?" His eyes searched her face. "That's not fair." "Fair?" She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You want to talk about fair? I spent 7 years in a marriage that made me feel like I was disappearing. And now I'm back here and everyone's acting like I just went on vacation instead of running away from an arranged marriage I never wanted. You think I wanted it either? I don't know what you wanted, Dante. You never told me. You just accepted it, like it was some business deal instead of the rest of our lives." They were standing too close now, voices low so the men working in nearby offices wouldn't hear. Dante's face had gone hard, that familiar wall slamming down between them. "What was I supposed to do?" he said quietly. "Your father wanted us together. My father wanted us together. The entire family expected it. I was trying to make the best of a situation neither of us could control. By being cold, distant, treating me like I was some obligation you had to manage. I was 25 years old, Lena. I didn't know how to—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "Fuck. This isn't the conversation we should be having right now. When should we have it? 7 years ago before I left? Or 7 years from now when we've both pretended it never happened?" Dante stepped back, putting distance between them. His face was unreadable now, locked down tight. "Get some rest. Tonight's going to be brutal." He walked away before she could respond. Lena stood in the hallway alone, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She'd been back one day and already the old wounds were tearing open. The history she'd tried to bury was clawing its way to the surface. This was a mistake. Coming back here was a mistake. But where else could she go? Back to Adrian? To that empty house and that empty life? And that empty version of herself? No, she'd chosen this. And she'd have to live with it. Maria found her 20 minutes later, standing in the library staring at nothing. "Come, we need to get you ready for tonight." "Ready how?" "Hair, makeup, dress. You're representing the family now. You need to look the part." Lena let herself be led upstairs to a guest bedroom that had been converted into a makeshift salon. 2 women were already waiting, a hairdresser and a makeup artist, both of whom jumped to attention when Maria brought Lena in. They worked on her for 2 hours, washing and styling her hair until it fell in dark waves down her back. Applying makeup that was dramatic but elegant, sharp eyeliner, dark lips, flawless foundation. When they were done, Lena looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked powerful, dangerous, like someone who could walk into a room and own it. Like a Moretti, Maria brought out a dress. Black, of course, long-sleeved and high-necked, but with a slit-up one thigh that made it just provocative enough to be interesting. The fabric was expensive. Silk or something close to it. It moved like water when Lena put it on. "Good," Maria said, circling her critically. "Now, jewelry." She opened a box and pulled out a necklace that made Lena's breath catch. Diamonds and white gold, delicate but clearly expensive. It had belonged to her mother. "I can't wear that," Lena whispered. "You can. You will." Maria fastened it around Lena's neck with steady hands. "Your mother would want you to have it. She always said you'd be the one to carry on the family legacy." Lena touched the necklace, feeling the weight of it against her collarbone. It felt like a collar, like a crown, like both at once. At 7 o'clock, a car came to take her to Salvatore's. Dante was already waiting in the back seat, wearing a black suit and tie. He looked up when she climbed in, and something flickered across his face before he got it under control. "You clean up nice," he said. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't be charming. Don't try to smooth this over." Lena settled into the seat and stared straight ahead. "Let's just get through tonight." The drive to Salvatore's took 15 minutes. It was a restaurant in Little Italy, family-owned, with a private dining room in the back where the Morettis conducted business. The front was legitimate, tourists and locals eating overpriced pasta while a guy named Gino played accordion. The back room was where the real deals happened. They pulled up to the service entrance. Dante got out first and offered his hand. Lena took it and let him help her out of the car, very aware of the men watching from the doorway. She recognized their faces. Tony Romano, Marco Gallo, Joey Bianco, all senior members of the family who'd known her since she was a kid. Their expressions ranged from curious to skeptical. "Gentlemen," Dante said, voice smooth and authoritative, "you remember Lena." "Hard to forget," Tony said. He was in his 50s, built like a truck, with a face that had seen too many fights. "Been a long time, sweetheart." 7 years? "Yeah, 7 years." Tony's eyes flicked up and down, taking in her dress, her jewelry, her entire presence. "Heard you got married. Didn't work out?" "No." "Shame." But he didn't sound like he thought it was a shame. He sounded like he thought it was inevitable. They went inside. The back room was already full. 20 men in suits, some with wives or girlfriends, all of them standing around making conversation and drinking expensive wine. The noise level dropped when Lena entered. Heads turned. Conversations stuttered to a halt. Vincent was holding court near the head of the table. When he saw Lena, he raised his glass. "Everyone, you remember my daughter." Silence. Heavy and thick. Then someone started clapping. Slow, sarcastic applause that made Lena's spine go rigid. It was Sal Torino, one of the old guard who'd been with Vincent since the beginning. "The prodigal daughter returns," Sal said. His voice was rough, cigarette damaged. "What's it been? 7 years? 8? 7? 7 years playing house with some civilian, and now you're back because what? Your marriage fell apart and you needed daddy to bail you out?" The room went very quiet. Vincent's face had gone hard, but he didn't intervene. This was a test. Lena could feel it. Everyone was watching to see how she'd handle being challenged. She met Sal's eyes and held them. "I'm back because this is where I belong." "You belong here? You walked away from this family, spit on everything we built, and now you think you can just walk back in like nothing happened?" "I think," Lena said slowly, "that what I do is between me and my father, not you." "Your father isn't the only one you disrespected." Sal took a step forward. He was drunk. She could smell it on him from 6 feet away. "You were supposed to marry Dante, unite the families. Instead, you ran off to play housewife with some nobody who probably couldn't even—" "Sal." Dante's voice cut through the room like a blade. "That's enough." "Is it?" "Because I remember watching you wait for her. Watching you put your life on hold while she was out there playing pretend. And now she's back and we're all supposed to just forget that?" Lena's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists at her sides. "You're right." Everyone stared at her. "You're right," she said again, louder. "I left. I walked away from this family and I hurt people. I know that. But I'm here now. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm serious." "Prove it how?" "However I have to." Sal studied her for a long moment. Then he spat on the floor near her feet. "We'll see." He walked away. The tension in the room eased slightly, conversations resuming at a low murmur. But Lena could still feel eyes on her, judging, measuring, waiting for her to fail. Dante appeared at her elbow. "You handled that well." "Did I?" "Sal's an asshole, but he's not wrong. People have questions. You're going to have to answer them eventually." "I just did." "No, you gave them a speech. That's not the same as earning trust." Lena turned to look at him. "What do you want from me, Dante? You want me to apologize? Grovel? Explain why I left?" "I want you to be honest." His voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. "With them. With yourself. With me. I'm trying." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm standing, you're doing the same thing you did 7 years ago. Running, just in a different direction." The words hit harder than Sal's insults. Lena felt something crack open in her chest, raw and painful. That's not fair. Fair doesn't exist in this world. You know that. Before she could respond, Vincent called everyone to the table. Dinner was served, multiple courses, expensive wine, the kind of meal that cost more than most people made in a month. Lena sat between Dante and her father, very aware of the way conversations around the table kept circling back to her, testing her knowledge, seeing if she remembered how this world worked. She did. More than she wanted to admit. The politics, the hierarchies, the unspoken rules that governed everything from where you sat to how you phrased a question. It came back to her like muscle memory, ingrained so deep that 7 years of playing normal couldn't erase it. Halfway through the meal, a younger guy across the table, couldn't be more than 30, leaned forward and said, "So, Lena, what do you think about the waterfront development, the Whitmore project?" The table went quiet again. This was another test. Everyone knew about Adrian, about Celeste. They wanted to see if she'd use her personal grievance to make business decisions. Lena set down her fork carefully. "I think Richard Whitmore is overextended. His financing is shaky, his timeline is unrealistic, and he's made promises to investors he probably can't keep. Personal opinion or business analysis?" Business analysis. "And personally, I don't care about Richard Whitmore, but I care about this family. And if his project is going to interfere with our interests, then we should shut it down." The young guy grinned. "Even though it'll hurt your ex-husband. Especially because it'll hurt my ex-husband. He should have thought about consequences before he made an enemy of this family." Approving nods around the table. Even Sal looked grudgingly impressed. Vincent raised his glass. "To consequences. To consequences," everyone echoed. After dinner, people filtered into the bar area for cigars and more drinks. Lena excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment alone. She locked herself in a stall and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door, trying to slow her racing heart. This was exhausting, performing for these men, proving herself over and over, watching every word, every expression, every gesture to make sure she projected strength instead of weakness. The bathroom door opened. High heels clicked across tile. Lena heard water running, someone fixing their makeup in the mirror. Then a voice said, "You can come out. I know you're in there." Lena recognized the voice. Gianna Russo, wife of Michael Russo, one of her father's senior associates. She'd known Gianna since childhood. They'd been friends once before Lena left. She opened the stall door. Gianna stood at the sink, reapplying lipstick. She was beautiful in that harsh, expensive way. Dark hair, sharp features, designer dress. She glanced at Lena in the mirror. "Rough night?" "You could say that. Sal's always been an asshole. Don't take it personally." "Little late for that." Gianna capped her lipstick and turned around, leaning back against the sink. "Can I give you some advice?" "Do I have a choice?" "No." Gianna smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "These men are never going to fully accept you back. You know that, right? You're Vincent's daughter, so they'll show respect. But they're never going to forget that you left, that you chose some random guy over the family." "I didn't choose him over the family. I chose myself." "Same thing." In their eyes, Gianna crossed her arms. "You want to survive here? You need to stop caring what they think. Stop trying to prove yourself. Just do the work and let the results speak for themselves." "What work?" "Whatever your father gives you. The family owns a lot of legitimate businesses now. Restaurants, real estate, import companies. Someone needs to manage them. Someone with a brain and no criminal record." Gianna tilted her head. "That could be you, if you stop acting like a kicked dog and start acting like a Moretti." Lena studied her. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I remember what it was like when I married into this world. The tests, the judgment, the constant feeling like you're one mistake away from being thrown out." Gianna's expression softened slightly. "And because your mother was kind to me when I had nobody else. I owe her. My mother's been dead for 15 years. Debts don't die, Lena. You should know that by now." Gianna walked out. Lena stood alone in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was perfect. She looked like she belonged here, but inside she felt like she was still pretending. When she came out, Dante was waiting in the hallway. Your father wants to talk to you. Private room upstairs." They climbed a narrow staircase to the second floor. Vincent was waiting in a small office, sitting behind a desk with papers spread out in front of him. He looked tired. Old. "Sit," he said. Lena sat. Dante stood by the door, arms crossed. Vincent pushed a document across the desk. "I'm putting you in charge of the restaurant portfolio. 12 properties across the city, everything from casual dining to high-end. They're all legitimate businesses, nothing illegal, but they need oversight, management, someone smart enough to spot problems before they become disasters." Lena picked up the document. It was a list of restaurants, each with financial summaries, employee counts, current issues. One of them was Salvatore's, where they were right now. "Why me?" "Because you're my daughter, because you're smart, and because you need something to do that isn't just sitting around this house feeling sorry for yourself." "I don't feel sorry for myself." Or, "Don't you?" Vincent leaned back in his chair. "You came back here because your marriage fell apart. Fine. That happens. But if you're going to stay, you need a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning that isn't just revenge against some mediocre man who didn't deserve you in the first place." Lena set down the document. "And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you'll fail doing something that matters." She looked at Dante, who was carefully avoiding her eyes. "What do you think?" "I think," Dante said slowly, "that you should take the job. You're good with numbers, good with people when you want to be. And the restaurants need someone who actually gives a shit instead of just collecting a paycheck." High praise. It's the truth. Vincent stood up and came around the desk. "Tomorrow, I'll have Marco take you around to each property, introduce you to the managers, show you the books. After that, it's up to you." Lena nodded. Her head was spinning. 24 hours ago, she'd been sitting in a suburban kitchen with divorce papers. Now she was being put in charge of a multi-million-dollar restaurant portfolio in her father's criminal empire. The whiplash was almost funny. Almost. They went back downstairs. The party was winding down, men filtering out in groups, calling for cars, making plans for next steps. Lena shook hands and accepted stiff congratulations, and tried not to flinch every time someone looked at her like she was a grenade with the pin pulled. At midnight, she and Dante finally left. The car ride back to the estate was silent. Lena stared out the window at the city lights, thinking about everything and nothing. "You did good tonight," Dante said eventually. "Did I?" "Yeah, you held your ground, didn't back down. That matters." "It doesn't feel like it matters." "It will. Give it time." Lena turned to look at him. "Why are you being nice to me?" "I'm not being nice. I'm being honest." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, then, "Because despite everything, I'm glad you're back." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Lena didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there was anything to say. So she just turned back to the window and watched the city blur past until they pulled through the gates of the estate. That night, Lena lay in her childhood bed and stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Her phone kept buzzing with texts from Adrian. She finally turned it off and threw it across the room. At 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The house was quiet, most of the lights off. She found her way to the kitchen and made herself tea, standing at the counter in the dark. Can't sleep either? She jumped. Vincent was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of whiskey in front of him. She hadn't seen him in the shadows. "Jesus, you scared me." "Sorry." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Keep an old man company." Lena sat. They were quiet for a while, just the sound of the house settling around them. "Your mother used to do this," Vincent said eventually. "When something was bothering her, she'd come down here in the middle of the night and make tea. She said the quiet helped her think." "I don't remember that." "You were young." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "She had a lot on her mind those last few years, trying to keep me from getting killed, trying to keep you safe, trying to hold this family together. She was better at it than I'll ever be. You don't know that yet." Vincent looked at her. "You know what she told me the night before she died?" Lena shook her head. She said, "Vincent, our daughter is going to leave. She's going to run away from this life, and you're going to want to stop her. Don't. Let her go. She needs to find out who she is without us first." Lena's throat went tight. "She knew?" Your mother knew everything. Vincent smiled, sad and proud. And she was right. You needed to leave, to see what else was out there, to make your own mistakes. I made a lot of them. We all do. That's how we learn. He reached across the table and took her hand. But you're home now. And this time it's your choice. Not mine. Not your mother's. Not Dante's. Yours. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough? You are. You just don't know it yet. They sat together in the quiet kitchen until Lena's tea went cold and Vincent's glass was empty. Then he kissed her forehead and went upstairs, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her fears and the ghost of her mother's wisdom. The next morning, Lena met Marco in the driveway. He was late 50s, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." They spent the day driving from restaurant to restaurant. Marco introduced her to managers, showed her financial statements, pointed out problems that needed fixing. Most of the places were running smoothly. A few had issues: employee theft at one location, health code violations at another, a manager at a third who was clearly skimming profits. Lena took notes, asked questions, started making mental lists of what needed to change. At the sixth restaurant, an upscale Italian place in the financial district, the manager was openly hostile. His name was Eddie something, and he looked at Lena like she was an insult. "With all due respect," he said, not sounding respectful at all, "I've been running this place for 8 years. I don't need some what?" Lena cut him off. "Some woman? Some kid? Vincent Moretti's daughter who doesn't know what she's doing?" Eddie's jaw tightened. "I didn't say that." "You were thinking it." She pulled out her phone and pulled up the financial records Dante had sent her that morning. "Your labor costs are 15% higher than industry standard. Your food waste is through the roof, and you're ordering premium ingredients but serving customers mid-tier quality. Where's the difference going, Eddie?" His face went red. "I don't know what you're implying." I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Lena stepped closer. "You've been stealing from this family for years. Probably thought nobody would notice as long as the place stayed profitable. But I noticed. And now you're going to fix it. You can't just..." "I can. I'm in charge now. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to personally repay every dollar you've stolen. You're going to take a pay cut, and you're going to spend the next year proving you deserve to keep this job. Or I'll replace you with someone who actually respects this family." Eddie looked at Marco, who just shrugged. "She's the boss." They left Eddie sputtering and drove to the next location. Marco was quiet for a few blocks. Then he said, "That was good." "Was it?" "Yeah, Eddie needed to be put in his place. Nobody else would do it because he's been around forever. But you didn't give a shit about that." "Should I have?" "No." Marco glanced at her. "You're going to be fine at this, kid. Better than fine." By the end of the day, Lena had a headache and a notebook full of problems to solve. But she also had something else, a sense of purpose. This wasn't revenge. Wasn't about Adrian or Celeste or any of that bullshit. This was about building something, being useful, mattering. When she got back to the estate, Dante was waiting in the library. "How was it?" "Exhausting, productive." She dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch. "I fired Eddie." "Eddie at Vincenzo's?" "Told him to repay what he stole or he's out." Dante laughed. "He's been skimming for years. Everyone knows. Nobody wanted to deal with it." "Well, I dealt with it. I can see that." He sat down across from her. "Your father called. Wants us to attend a charity gala Friday night. Some event Whitmore's hosting downtown." Lena's stomach dropped. "What?" "Richard Whitmore is hosting a gala for some arts foundation his wife runs. All the major families will be there. Politicians, business leaders. It's the perfect opportunity to make a statement." "What kind of statement?" "That you're back. That you're part of this family again. That Adrian Cross fucked with the wrong woman." Lena closed her eyes. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Dante, that's..." "Lena." He leaned forward. "You wanted to understand what he threw away. You wanted him to see who you really are. This is how you do it. You walk into that gala on my arm, wearing the Moretti name, and you show him exactly what he lost." Her heart was pounding. The idea of facing Adrian, of facing Celeste, of walking into that world as herself instead of the quiet housewife she'd pretended to be. It terrified her. It thrilled her. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, let's do it." Dante smiled. "That's my girl." "I'm not your girl." "No, but you were supposed to be. And maybe it's time we both stopped pretending that didn't matter." He stood up and walked out before she could respond. Lena sat alone in the library, her hands shaking, her mind racing. Friday, 3 days. In 3 days, she'd come face to face with her old life and her new life, and somehow she'd have to find a way to reconcile them, or destroy one of them completely. She wasn't sure which option scared her more. The dress arrived Thursday afternoon in a box so expensive it looked like it should contain crown jewels instead of fabric. Lena opened it in her bedroom with Maria hovering over her shoulder, making approving noises before she'd even pulled back the tissue paper. It was black. Of course it was black, but not simple black. This was the kind of black that swallowed light, silk so fine it moved like water. The neckline plunged lower than anything she'd worn in 7 years. The back was open almost to her waist. It was the kind of dress that announced you weren't asking for permission to exist. "Perfect," Maria said. "You'll look like a queen." Lena held it up and stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, harder, sharper. Someone who could wear a dress like this and make it look like armor instead of vulnerability. "What if I can't do this?" The words came out before she could stop them. Maria's reflection appeared behind hers. "Then you fake it. That's what we all do, baby. We fake it until it becomes real." Friday arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Lena spent the morning at 2 of the restaurants dealing with staffing issues and supply chain problems. Keeping busy, keeping her mind occupied so she wouldn't think about what was coming tonight. It didn't work. By 6 o'clock, she was back at the estate getting ready. The same team that had worked on her for the dinner at Salvatore's returned, but this time they went harder. Hair swept up in an elegant twist with a few pieces left loose to frame her face. Makeup dramatic and precise. Smoky eyes, dark red lips that looked almost black in certain light. When they were done, Lena looked like she could kill someone with a glance and make it look effortless. The dress fit perfectly. So did the heels. Black stilettos that added 4 inches to her height and made her legs look like weapons. Maria fastened her mother's diamond necklace around her throat again, then added matching earrings that caught the light with every movement. "There," Maria said, stepping back. "Now you're ready for war." Dante knocked at 7 sharp. When Lena opened the door, she watched his expression shift through 3 different emotions in the space of a heartbeat before he locked it down behind that familiar wall. "You look—" He stopped, started again. "Good. You look good." "So do you." He did. Black tuxedo that probably cost more than Adrian's car, crisp white shirt, black tie. His hair was slicked back, making the sharp angles of his face even more pronounced. He looked dangerous, powerful, like exactly the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about. They didn't speak in the car. The driver navigated through downtown traffic while Lena stared out the window and tried to breathe through the anxiety clawing at her throat. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to make it stop. "Hey," Dante's voice was quiet. "You don't have to do this. We can turn around right now." "No." "Lena, I said no." She turned to look at him. "I need to do this. I need him to see." "See what?" "That I'm not the woman he thought I was. That I never was." Dante studied her face for a long moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm, steady, grounding. "Then let's go show him." The gala was being held at the Whitmore Tower, a gleaming glass and steel monstrosity downtown that Richard Whitmore had built as a monument to his own success. The lobby was already packed with people in evening wear, champagne glasses glinting under crystal chandeliers, the sound of string music floating over conversation. Lena and Dante stepped out of the car, and immediately heads turned. She could feel eyes tracking them as they walked toward the entrance, could hear the whispers starting like wildfire spreading through dry grass. "Is that Vincent Moretti's daughter? I thought she left the family. Who's that with her? Dante Moretti? Jesus Christ, the Morettis are here." The reactions ranged from curious to nervous to outright terrified. These people knew who the Morettis were. what they represented. And seeing Lena walk in on Dante's arm was like watching a ghost return from the dead wearing a crown. They checked in at the entrance. A young woman with a clipboard looked increasingly panicked as she scanned the guest list. "I'm sorry, I don't see your names. We're not on the list." Dante's voice was smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "But we're still coming in. Sir, I can't just call Richard Whitmore. Tell him Dante Moretti is here. He'll understand." The woman's face went white. She picked up a phone with trembling hands and whispered something into it. 30 seconds later, a man in an expensive suit came rushing over. He took one look at Dante and Lena, and his professional smile went brittle at the edges. "Mr. Moretti, what a surprise. Please come in." They were escorted into the ballroom like they were visiting dignitaries instead of uninvited guests. The space was massive, soaring ceilings, walls of windows overlooking the city, tables arranged around a dance floor where people were already moving to the orchestra's music. Everything was white and gold and excessive, the kind of wealth that screamed insecurity. Lena scanned the crowd, looking for Adrian, for Celeste, for anyone she recognized from her old life. "There," Dante murmured. He nodded toward the far side of the room. Richard Whitmore stood near the bar, surrounded by admirers. He was exactly what Lena expected: silver-haired, impeccably dressed, radiating that particular brand of arrogance that came from never being told no. Next to him stood a blonde woman who had to be his wife, and beside her, Celeste. She was beautiful. Lena had seen photos, but they hadn't done her justice. Tall, elegant, with the kind of bone structure that belonged on magazine covers. Her dress was white, of course it was white, and dripping with diamonds that probably cost more than Lena's childhood home. And next to Celeste, looking uncomfortable in a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit, was Adrian. Lena's breath caught. 7 years of marriage, and she thought she knew every expression on his face. But this was new. The forced smile, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept darting around the room like he was looking for an escape route. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. He looked like he didn't belong here. "You ready?" Dante asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." They crossed the ballroom slowly, deliberately. Lena was aware of every eye that followed them, every whispered conversation that stopped as they passed. The crowd parted like water around them. Richard Whitmore saw them coming. She watched recognition dawn on his face, followed quickly by calculation. He was a smart man. He knew exactly who they were and what their presence here meant. "Mr. Moretti," Whitmore's voice was cordial but wary. "I wasn't expecting you tonight." Clearly, Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I hope you don't mind us crashing. We heard it was for a good cause." Of course, of course. The more the merrier." Whitmore's gaze slid to Lena. "And you are?" "Lena Moretti." She extended her hand, watching his expression change as he put the pieces together. "Vincent Moretti's daughter." "I see." He shook her hand, his grip firm but not aggressive. Testing. "I didn't know Vincent had a daughter. Most people don't. I prefer to keep a low profile." That was when Adrian noticed them. She watched his face go through a series of reactions: confusion, shock, disbelief, horror. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound cut through the conversation like a gunshot. Everyone turned to stare. Adrian stood frozen, champagne spreading across his shoes, his face white as paper. "Adrian?" Celeste touched his arm. "Are you all right?" He couldn't speak, just stared at Lena like she was a hallucination, like his brain couldn't process what his eyes were showing him. Lena smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. "Hello, Adrian. It's been a while." "Lena?" His voice cracked on her name. "What are you... Why are you... I'm sorry, do you two know each other?" Celeste looked between them, confusion written across her perfect face. "Know each other?" Lena tilted her head. "You could say that. Adrian and I were married for 7 years." The silence that followed was deafening. Celeste's mouth fell open. Richard Whitmore's expression went from wary to absolutely furious. Adrian looked like he might pass out. "Married," Celeste repeated slowly. "You were married. Still are, technically. The divorce isn't final yet." Lena turned her attention to Celeste, and something unexpected happened. She felt sorry for her. This woman was just collateral damage in Adrian's desperate social climbing. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Adrian has a habit of not being entirely honest about his past. You told me you'd never been married, Celeste said to Adrian. Her voice was shaking. You said you'd had relationships, but nothing serious. That's not... Lena, what the hell are you doing? Adrian finally found his voice. It came out strangled, desperate. I'm attending a charity gala. Is that a problem? You can't be here. Why not? It's a public event. Lena gestured around the ballroom. Well, semi-public. I'm sure the Whitmores don't mind having the Moretti family here. We're very generous with charitable donations. Richard Whitmore's face had gone red. The Moretti family. You mean Vincent Moretti? That's right. My father. Lena met his eyes without flinching. I believe you two have business interests that overlap. The waterfront development project? The temperature in their little circle dropped about 20 degrees. Richard was smart enough to know exactly what she was implying. The Morettis had the power to destroy his project. And here was Vincent's daughter, standing in his ballroom, making sure everyone knew the connection. Mr. Whitmore, Dante said smoothly, perhaps we should discuss this in a more private setting. I'd hate for business to interfere with such a lovely evening. Of course. Whitmore's jaw was so tight, Lena thought she could hear his teeth grinding. My office. 10 minutes. He stalked off. His wife followed, throwing confused glances over her shoulder. Celeste stood frozen, staring at Adrian like she'd never seen him before. Celeste! Adrian reached for her. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Please, I can explain. Explain what? That you lied to me? That you're still married? That you... Her voice broke. She looked at Lena. How long? How long were we married? How long has he been cheating? Lena could have lied, could have been kind, but she'd spent 7 years being kind to Adrian, and where had that gotten her? 8 months, she said quietly. He told me on our anniversary. Celeste's face crumpled. She pressed a hand to her mouth, turned, and ran. Not walked. Ran, in her expensive dress and her $1 million diamonds, pushing through the crowd while people stared. Adrian watched her go. Then he turned on Lena, with fury twisting his features into something ugly. You bitch! You vindictive, crazy bitch! Careful. Dante's voice went cold. You're talking to a Moretti. I don't give a shit who she is. She just destroyed my life. No. Lena stepped closer, close enough to smell the desperation on him. You destroyed your own life when you threw away our marriage for money and status. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Who I am? Who I am? Adrian laughed, wild and bitter. You want to talk about who people really are? You lied to me for 7 years, Lena. 7 years you pretended to be some nobody with no family, no connections, nothing. You were playing me the whole time. I wasn't playing you, I was trying to escape. Escape what? Your gangster family? Your crime empire? He was shouting now, drawing stares from all over the ballroom. You're no better than me. You're worse. At least I'm honest about wanting money and power. Dante moved forward, but Lena held up a hand. It's fine. It's not fine, Adrian snarled. You married me under false pretenses. You used me. I used you? The words came out soft, deadly. I gave you 7 years of my life, Adrian. I supported your career. I moved cities for you. I made myself smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared. And you thanked me by fucking someone else and throwing me away like trash. So don't you dare stand here and talk about being used. You're a liar. And you're a coward. The slap came out of nowhere. Adrian's hand connected with her face hard enough to snap her head to the side, the crack echoing through the ballroom. The world went silent. Lena touched her cheek, feeling the heat spreading across her skin. Her vision had gone red at the edges. Not from pain, from rage. Then Dante moved. He was on Adrian in half a second, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the wall so hard the impact rattled the nearby champagne tower. Adrian's feet left the floor. His face went purple. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Dante said quietly. His voice was calm, conversational, which made it about 1,000 times more terrifying than if he'd been yelling. Nobody touches her, nobody. Dante, Lena's voice cut through the frozen crowd. Let him go. He hit you. I know. Let him go anyway. Dante held him there for another 3 seconds. Then he opened his hand and let Adrian drop. Adrian collapsed, gasping, clutching his throat. Security was pushing through the crowd now, hotel staff. Richard Whitmore came rushing back, his face apoplectic. What the hell is going on? Your daughter's fiancé just assaulted my date, Dante said, in front of 200 witnesses. That's not... He's lying. Adrian tried to stand and fell back down. I saw it. Someone in the crowd spoke up, then another. Me too. He hit her. Right in the face. Whitmore looked at Adrian with disgust. Pure, undiluted disgust. Get him out of here. Mr. Whitmore, please. Get him out. Security grabbed Adrian under the arms and hauled him toward the exit. He was still trying to explain, to justify, to make them understand. His voice faded as they dragged him through the ballroom and out of sight. Lena stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, her face throbbing, her hands steady. She didn't cry, didn't shake, just stood there like a statue while the crowd whispered and pointed and pulled out their phones. This would be all over social media by morning. The Moretti daughter, the assault, the scandal. Good. Mr. Whitmore, Dante said. That meeting, I think we should have it now. Whitmore looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. Yes, of course. Follow me. They went upstairs to his private office. It was all dark wood and leather, the kind of space designed to intimidate. Whitmore poured himself a scotch with shaking hands and downed it in one gulp. I'm sorry about Adrian, he said. I had no idea about his situation. Clearly, Lena sat down in one of the leather chairs, crossing her legs. Her face still hurt, but she kept her expression neutral. How long have they been engaged? 3 months. Celeste seemed happy. I vetted him, or I thought I did. Clean background check. Good job. No red flags. You didn't check for a wife. I didn't think I needed to. Whitmore refilled his glass. He told us he was single, never been married. We believed him. People lie, Dante said from where he stood by the window. Especially when they want something badly enough. What do you want? Whitmore turned to face them. You didn't come here tonight by accident. You don't do anything by accident. So, what do you want? Lena exchanged a glance with Dante. This was the moment. The play they'd been setting up. Your waterfront development, she said. It's dead. Whitmore went very still. Excuse me? The Planning Commission is going to deny your permits. Your financing is going to fall through. Your investors are going to pull out. She ticked off each point on her fingers. In about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, the whole project is going to collapse. And you're going to lose everything you put into it. You can't. We can. And we will. Dante's voice was matter-of-fact. Unless you give us what we want, which is partnership. We want 40% equity in the development. In exchange, the permits get approved, the financing stays solid, the investors stay happy. Whitmore's hand tightened around his glass. That's extortion. That's business. Lena leaned forward. You can walk away with 60% of something, or you can fight us and end up with 100% of nothing. Your choice. Vincent Moretti sent you here to threaten me. My father doesn't know we're here. This is our deal, mine and Dante's. She held his gaze. We're giving you a way out, Mr. Whitmore. I suggest you take it. Whitmore sat down heavily behind his desk. He looked at them both, calculation warring with fury on his face. I need to think about it. You have 72 hours. Dante pushed off from the window. After that, the offer expires and we start tearing your project apart piece by piece. They left him sitting there, stunned and cornered. Downstairs, the gala was still in full swing, but the energy had shifted. People watched them leave with a mixture of fear and fascination. The Morettis had arrived uninvited, caused a scene, and walked out like they owned the place. Because they did. They owned this city in all the ways that mattered. The car was waiting outside. Lena and Dante climbed in, and the driver pulled away from the curb. They made it 2 blocks before Lena's hand started shaking. Pull over, she said. What? Pull over, now. The driver found a side street and stopped. Lena threw open the door and stumbled out, bracing herself against the car. Her breath was coming in gasps now, all the adrenaline that had kept her standing finally crashing through her system. Dante was beside her in an instant. Hey, look at me. She couldn't. Her vision was blurring. He hit me. I know. He looked me in the face and he hit me. I know, baby, I know. Dante pulled her against his chest, one hand cupping the back of her head. But he's nothing now. He's nobody. He can't hurt you anymore. Lena pressed her face against his shoulder and tried to breathe. The silk of his tuxedo was cool against her burning cheek. She could feel his heart beating steady and strong under her palm. I thought I'd feel different, she whispered. I thought when I saw him, when he realized who I was, I'd feel powerful, vindicated, but I just feel, what? Empty. Dante pulled back enough to look at her. His hands framed her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. That's because revenge doesn't fill holes, Lena. It just makes new ones. Then what was the point? The point, he said quietly, was showing everyone, including yourself, that you're not that scared housewife anymore. You're not someone people can throw away. You're a Moretti, and we don't forgive. We don't forget. And we sure as hell don't let anyone hit us without consequences. She searched his face, seeing past the cold exterior to something warmer underneath. When did you get so wise? 7 years of waiting for you to come back. He smiled, sad and real. Gives a man time to think. They stood there on the empty street, her face cradled in his hands, her heart racing for entirely different reasons now. The moment stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Then Dante's phone rang. He answered without looking away from her. What? Lena watched his expression change. The warmth drained out of his face, replaced by something cold and sharp and dangerous. When? He asked. Then, where is she now? And finally, we're on our way. He hung up and stepped back, his hands falling away from her face. What's wrong? Get in the car. Dante, what happened? Get in the fucking car, Lena. The drive back to the estate took 20 minutes but felt like hours. Dante was on the phone the entire time, his voice low and urgent, giving orders to people she couldn't see. Lena sat frozen, fear crawling up her spine. When they pulled through the gates, the house was lit up like Christmas. Too many cars in the driveway. Too many men standing around looking grim. Marco was waiting at the front door. His face was gray. Where is he? Dante demanded. Library. Doctors are with him now. Lena's stomach dropped. Who? What happened? Nobody answered. They just moved aside and let Dante pull her through the house. The library doors were open, revealing a crowd of men standing around looking helpless. Medical equipment. Voices calling out numbers and commands. And in the center of it all, lying on the couch, was Vincent. Dad! Lena broke away from Dante and ran to him. Vincent looked old. So old. His skin was gray, his breathing shallow. There was a doctor on each side of him, taking vitals, checking monitors. When he saw Lena, he tried to smile. Hey, baby girl. What happened? Dad, what happened? Heart attack, one of the doctors said without looking up. Massive coronary event. We're stabilizing him now, but he needs to get to a hospital. Then get him to a hospital. Lena. Vincent's hand found hers. His grip was weak. Listen to me. Don't you dare do a deathbed speech. You're going to be fine. Listen. He squeezed her hand. The family needs leadership. Someone strong, someone smart, someone they'll respect. That's you. You're the leader. Not anymore. Vincent's eyes found Dante. You two. Together. Like it was always meant to be. Dad? Promise me. Lena's throat closed. Tears were streaming down her face. I promise. But you're going to be fine. You're going to... Vincent's eyes rolled back. The monitor started screaming. The doctors moved in, pushing Lena aside, shouting commands. Dante caught her before she fell, holding her against his chest while they worked. Clear! Vincent's body arced off the couch. The monitor kept screaming. Again, clear! Nothing. We're losing him. Somebody get me! The sound cut off. Flat, steady, the sound of nothing. One of the doctors looked up. Time of death, 11:43 p.m. The words didn't make sense. Lena heard them, but they didn't connect to anything real. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. No. Her voice sounded strange, distant. No, do it again. Shock him again. Ma'am, do it again. She tried to lunge forward, but Dante held her back. He's not dead. He can't be dead. Lena. Dante's voice was rough. He's gone. No, 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 no. She was sobbing now, ugly and broken. We just got back. I just came home. He can't leave me again. But he was gone. Vincent Moretti, her father, the head of the family, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, was dead. And the world kept turning like it didn't matter. The house filled with people, family members, associates, business partners, everyone coming to pay respects, to offer condolences, to position themselves for whatever came next. Lena sat in her father's chair in the library and received them like a queen, her face blank, her voice mechanical. Thank you for coming. Yes, it was very sudden. We'll announce funeral arrangements soon. She said the same things over and over until the words lost all meaning. Sometime around 3 a.m., the crowd finally thinned. Dante appeared at her side with a glass of whiskey. Drink this. She did. It burned going down, but she barely felt it. The family's going to convene tomorrow, he said quietly, for the reading of the will and to discuss succession. Succession? Someone has to run things, Lena. The organization can't just stop because Vincent's gone. You do it. It doesn't work that way. I'm not blood. I can advise, support, enforce, but I can't lead, not alone. Then who? Dante knelt down in front of her chair, taking her hands. You. Your father wanted you to take over. He told me months ago, before you even came back. That's insane. That's the truth. He always knew you'd come home eventually, and when you did, he wanted you to be ready to lead. I'm not ready. I don't know how to, Neither did he when he started. Nobody's ready, Lena. You just do it anyway. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of responsibility he'd been carrying. You'll help me? Every step of the way. Promise? Promise. Lena closed her eyes. Her father was dead, her old life was destroyed, her new life was terrifying, and she was about to become the head of a criminal empire she'd spent 7 years trying to escape. But she'd promised, and Moretti's kept their promises. The family meeting convened at noon in Vincent's office. The senior members filed in one by one. Sal, Tony, Marco, all the men who'd known her father for decades. They looked at Lena with expressions ranging from sympathetic to skeptical. Vincent's lawyer, a thin man named Davidson who looked like he'd never smiled in his life, opened the briefcase and pulled out documents. This is Vincent Moretti's last will and testament, updated 3 months ago. He adjusted his glasses. To summarize the relevant portions, the estate, personal assets, and business holdings are divided as follows. 40% to his daughter, Lena Moretti. 40% to Dante Moretti. 20% distributed among senior family members and key associates. Murmurs around the room. Sal's face went dark. However, Davidson continued, there is a condition attached to Miss Moretti's inheritance. She must assume leadership of the family organization alongside Dante Moretti. If she refuses or proves unable to fulfill this role, her share reverts to a trust controlled by the senior council. What the hell is this? Sal stood up. Vincent promised me, Vincent promised you 20 years of generous compensation and a comfortable retirement, Davidson said without looking up from the papers. Which is exactly what you're receiving. The leadership question was never negotiable. She's been gone 7 years, and now she's back. She abandoned this family. She's Vincent's daughter. Marco stood up too. Sit down, Sal. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself? We're supposed to just hand control of everything we built to some girl who ran away to play house? Lena had been sitting quietly, listening. Now she stood up slowly. The room went quiet. You're right, she said. Everyone stared at her. I did abandon this family. I ran away because I was scared and stupid, and I thought I could have a normal life. I was wrong about everything. She walked around the desk, standing in the space where her father used to command respect with just his presence. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore. So you can accept that, or you can leave. Your choice. You think you can just waltz in here and... I don't think anything, Sal. I know. She met his eyes without flinching. This family needs leadership. My father chose me and Dante. If you don't like it, there's the door. We'll pay out your share and you can retire somewhere nice and never think about us again. Sal's face went purple. For a second, Lena thought he might actually swing at her. Then he spat on the floor and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Nobody else moved. Anyone else want to leave? Lena asked. Silence. Good. Then let's talk about the Whitmore situation. They spent the next 3 hours going through every aspect of the family business. Lena took notes, asked questions, made decisions. She felt like she was wearing her father's skin, channeling something she didn't quite understand but recognized on an instinctual level. This was what she was born to do. When the meeting finally ended, Marco lingered behind. You did good, kid. Vincent would be proud. You think? I know. He squeezed her shoulder. He talked about you all the time, even when you were gone. He never stopped believing you'd come back. After he left, Lena sat alone in her father's office, in his chair, looking at his desk covered with papers that were now her responsibility. The weight of it was crushing. You okay? Dante appeared in the doorway. No, but I will be. He came in and closed the door behind him. We need to talk. About what? About us. About what happens now. Lena's heart started racing. Dante, I'm not asking you to marry me, not right now anyway, but we need to figure out how this is going to work. Leading together, being partners. And if I don't want that, then we'll figure something else out. But Lena, he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the desk, looking down at her. I've waited 7 years for you to come back. And now that you're here, now that we're doing this together, I need to know if there's any chance you could feel. His phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. What? Lena sat up straight. It's the hospital, the one where they took Adrian after the gala. He answered. Moretti. Lena watched his face go through shock, confusion, and finally something that looked like horror. We'll be right there. He hung up. Get your coat. What happened? Adrian's in intensive care. Celeste's there. She's asking for you. They drove to the hospital in silence. Lena's mind was racing. Why would Celeste want to see her? What could have happened between the gala and now? The ICU waiting room was eerily quiet. Celeste sat alone in a corner, still wearing her white dress from the gala, now wrinkled and stained. Her makeup was destroyed, mascara tracking down her face. When she saw Lena, she stood up. Thank you for coming. What happened? Celeste's voice was hollow. After security threw him out of the gala, Adrian went back to my apartment. He was drunk, angry, started smashing things, screaming. I got scared and called my security team. They came to remove him, and he... She stopped, swallowed hard. He jumped. Off my balcony, 32nd floor. Lena's legs went weak. Is he... alive? Barely. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding. The doctors say even if he survives, he'll probably never walk again. Celeste looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. This is my fault. I should have seen the signs, should have known he was unstable. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I pushed him away, made him feel like he had nothing. He did that himself. Lena sat down in one of the plastic chairs. Her mind couldn't process this. Adrian had jumped, had tried to kill himself because she'd exposed him, because she'd destroyed his dreams of wealth and status, because of her. There's something else, like Celeste said quietly. Something I need to tell you about my father and your family. Lena looked up. What? My father's been planning this for months. The gala, getting close to Adrian, all of it. Celeste's hands were shaking. He knew who Adrian was married to, knew you were a Moretti. He's been using Adrian to get information about your family's operations. The world tilted. What? Adrian didn't know. He's too stupid. But my father... Celeste's voice cracked. My father's working with the FBI. He's been gathering evidence for a RICO case against your family, using Adrian as an unwitting informant. And now that you're back, now that you're visible again, they have everything they need to indict the entire organization. Lena couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. Couldn't be possible. You're lying. I wish I was. Celeste pulled out her phone and pulled up emails, text messages, documents that outlined exactly what Richard Whitmore had been planning. I found these tonight on his computer. After everything that happened at the gala, I went looking for answers, and I found this. Lena scrolled through the messages with numb fingers. It was all there. Dates, details, plans to use Adrian's connection to her to build a case that would destroy the Moretti family. Why are you telling me this? Because my father used me too. He put me with Adrian knowing exactly who he was, knowing it would eventually lead back to you. I'm just another piece in his game. Celeste's face was hard now, angry, and I'm done being used. Dante took the phone and read through everything. His expression went deadly. We need to leave. Now. They didn't make it to the parking lot. FBI agents swarmed out of unmarked vehicles, blocking every exit. Agents in tactical gear, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Lena Moretti! Dante Moretti! You're under arrest! They were thrown against the wall, hands cuffed behind their backs, rights being read while hospital staff and visitors watched in shock. This was it. The twist. The betrayal. Adrian hadn't been just a bad husband. He'd been an unwitting informant in a federal investigation that had been building for months. And now, with Vincent dead and Lena and Dante in custody, the entire Moretti empire was about to come crashing down. As they were being led to separate vehicles, Lena caught Dante's eyes. He looked calm. Too calm. Trust me, he mouthed. Then they were shoved into cars and driven away, sirens wailing, the hospital lights fading in the distance. Lena sat in the back of the car with her hands cuffed, her father dead, her life destroyed, and only one thought running through her mind. This was the point of no return, and she had no idea how to survive what came next. The interrogation room smelled like bleach and desperation. Lena sat handcuffed to a metal table bolted to the floor, staring at her reflection in the two-way mirror. She looked like hell. The makeup from the gala had smeared down her face. Her dress was wrinkled. There was a bruise forming on her cheek where Adrian had hit her. Was that really only hours ago? The door opened. Two men in suits walked in. FBI. The first was older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen too much. The second was younger, eager, holding a thick file like it contained the secrets to the universe. Miss Moretti, the older one said, sitting down across from her. I'm Special Agent Crawford. This is Agent Morrison. We have some questions. Lena said nothing, just stared at them with dead eyes. You've had a rough night, Crawford continued. Your father died. Your ex-husband tried to kill himself, and now you're here. That's a lot to process. Still nothing. Here's the thing. Crawford opened the file and spread photographs across the table. Crime scenes, bodies, ledgers with damning numbers. We've been building a case against the Moretti family for 3 years. We have documentation of money laundering, racketeering, extortion, murder for hire. We have testimony from witnesses. We have financial records that tie your father's organization to dozens of illegal operations. Lena looked at the photographs without flinching. She'd seen worse, been raised around worse. You disappeared 7 years ago, Morrison said. He had an annoying voice, too high-pitched. Married Adrian Cross, changed your name to Lena Vale. Tried to be normal, but you couldn't stay away, could you? Once a criminal, always a criminal. I want my lawyer, Lena said. Her voice was hoarse from not speaking. Sure, absolutely. That's your right. Crawford leaned back. But here's the thing. Your lawyer's probably getting arrested right about now, along with Marco, Tony, and about 15 other members of your organization. We're taking everyone down tonight. The entire empire your father built, it's over. The word should have scared her, should have made her panic. But all Lena felt was a strange calm settling over her shoulders like a blanket. Then why am I here? If you're so sure of your case, why do you need to interrogate me? Crawford and Morrison exchanged a glance. We're offering you a deal, Crawford said. Full immunity. Witness protection. A new life somewhere far from here. All you have to do is testify against the family. Tell us everything you know about the operations, the money, the violence. Help us put away everyone who's left. Turn on my family. Save yourself. Lena laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. You think I spent 7 years away from this life just to come back and destroy it? You think I'm that weak? I think you're smart enough to know when you're beaten. Crawford pushed a document across the table. This is a cooperation agreement. Sign it and you walk out of here tonight. Don't sign it, and you go to trial with everyone else. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. My father just died. I know. I'm sorry for your loss. Crawford's voice softened slightly. But Vincent Moretti was a criminal. He hurt people, destroyed lives. You don't have to go down with his legacy. Lena looked at the cooperation agreement, all those pages of legal text that would erase everything she'd just reclaimed. Her name, her power, her place in the world. She thought about Vincent, about his last words, about the promise she'd made. No. No? I'm not testifying. I'm not cooperating. I'm not doing anything until I speak to my lawyer. She met Crawford's eyes. And if you don't like that, you can go fuck yourself. Crawford's professional mask slipped. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. They left her in the interrogation room for 6 hours. No food, no water. Just her and the fluorescent lights and the slow ticking of the clock on the wall. Every hour or so, someone would come in and try again. Different tactics. Good cop, bad cop, sympathetic cop. They all got the same answer. I want my lawyer. Finally, at 7 in the morning, the door opened and a woman walked in. She was in her 50s, wearing an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes were sharp as knives. Miss Moretti, I'm Catherine Reeves, your attorney. Sorry it took me so long to get here. I had to post bail for 12 other people first. Lena could have cried with relief. They offered me a deal. I know. They offered everyone a deal. Catherine sat down and opened her briefcase. Don't sign anything. Don't say anything. They're fishing. Their case is weaker than they're pretending. How weak? Weak enough that they need cooperating witnesses to make it stick. Catherine pulled out documents and started spreading them across the table. The RICO case is built on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of low-level associates who are facing their own charges. They have financial records, but nothing that directly ties you or Dante to illegal activity. Everything they have on Vincent died with him. What about Adrian? Celeste said her father was using him as an informant. Adrian Cross never knowingly provided information to the FBI. He was too stupid to realize what was happening. Richard Whitmore was feeding them information he gathered from Adrian's casual conversations, but none of it is admissible because Adrian wasn't a willing participant. Catherine's smile was sharp. Whitmore violated about 6 different federal guidelines trying to build this case. His evidence is poisoned fruit. Hope flickered in Lena's chest. So what happens now? Now we go to arraignment. The judge will set bail. You'll pay it. And then we start tearing their case apart piece by piece until there's nothing left. Can you do that? Sweetheart, I've been defending the Moretti family for 20 years. This isn't my first rodeo. The arraignment happened at 9 a.m. in a packed courtroom. Lena was brought in wearing prison scrubs, hands cuffed in front of her, hair a disaster. Cameras flashed despite the judge's warnings. This was going to be front-page news. The Moretti Empire on trial. Dante was brought in separately. He looked tired but calm, his eyes finding hers across the courtroom. Something passed between them. A silent promise. They'd get through this. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Dietrich, read off charges that made Lena's head spin. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. On and on until the words blurred together. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Your Honor. Catherine's voice was clear and firm. Bail is set at $5 million cash. Lena's heart sank. She didn't have $5 million in cash. Most of the family assets were frozen pending the investigation. Your Honor, Catherine said, my client is not a flight risk. She returned to the city voluntarily after 7 years away. She has deep ties to the community. She's grieving the recent loss of her father. Setting bail at $5 million is excessive. Your client is accused of leading a criminal enterprise, counselor. $5 million seems reasonable given the circumstances. I'll post it, a voice from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Gianna Russo stood up, elegant in a black suit. I'll post Miss Moretti's bail, cash, today. The prosecutor objected. The judge overruled. Within an hour, Lena was walking out of the courthouse with Catherine and Gianna flanking her like bodyguards. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Miss Moretti, did you know your father was a criminal? Are you taking over the family business? What do you have to say to Adrian Cross? Lena kept her head down and pushed through to the waiting car. They climbed in and the driver pulled away, leaving chaos behind them. Thank you, Lena said to Gianna. I'll pay you back. Don't worry about it. Consider it an investment. Gianna's expression was serious. But Lena, you need to understand something. The family is falling apart. Half the senior members are in custody. The others are panicking. People are talking about cutting deals, disappearing, turning state's evidence. If you're going to hold this together, you need to act fast. How? Show strength? Make it clear that anyone who cooperates with the FBI is dead. And I mean that literally. Gianna's eyes were hard. This is war. You don't win wars by being nice. The car took them to a safe house in the suburbs, a nondescript ranch house that looked like it belonged to a retired accountant. Inside it was set up like a command center, computers, phones, whiteboards covered in names and connections. Marco was there. So were a few other family members who'd made bail or avoided arrest entirely. They all looked up when Lena walked in. Where's Dante? She asked. Still in lockup, Marco said. They set his bail at $10 million. We're working on it. Work faster. Lena shrugged out of the prison scrubs and into clothes someone had brought. Jeans, a black shirt, boots. She felt more human immediately. What's the status? Marco pulled up a list on one of the computers. 18 arrests so far. The FBI seized the restaurant in Little Italy, 2 warehouses, and froze about $40 million in assets. They're still raiding properties. We've got maybe 48 hours before they finish building their case and start offering deals. Who's most likely to flip? Sal? He was already pissed about being passed over for leadership. Now he's facing 20 years. He'll sing like a canary if they offer him immunity. Where is he? Federal holding. No bail. Lena paced the room, thinking. Her father had taught her that the key to controlling an organization was controlling information. People flipped when they were scared and isolated. When they thought cooperating was their only option, she needed to remind them that cooperation meant death. Get me on the phone with our contacts in the prison system, she said. I need to send a message. Marco hesitated. What kind of message? The kind that makes people remember why they don't cross the Moretti family. It took 3 hours to arrange, 3 hours of phone calls and favors and money changing hands. But by 2 p.m., Sal had been attacked in his cell by another inmate. Nothing fatal. Just enough to put him in the infirmary with a broken jaw and the clear understanding that the family could reach him anywhere. The message spread fast. By evening, no one was talking about cooperation anymore. Dante made bail at midnight. Lena was waiting when he walked out of the detention center, exhausted and rumpled, but still standing. He saw her and something in his face softened. You okay? He asked. No, but I'm functional. She walked to him and surprised herself by wrapping her arms around him. He stiffened for just a second, then pulled her close. I thought I was going to lose you too. Not a chance. His voice was rough against her hair. We're in this together, remember? They drove back to the safe house. The place was crowded now. More family members had shown up, looking for guidance, for orders, for someone to tell them what to do. When Lena and Dante walked in, everyone went quiet. Listen up, Dante said, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. The FBI thinks they can destroy us. They think arresting a few people and freezing some assets will make this family collapse. They're wrong. How do we fight them? Someone asked. They have everything, financial records, testimony. They've been building this case for years. Then we tear it down. Lena stepped forward. Catherine says their evidence is weak. It's all circumstantial. They need cooperating witnesses to make it stick, so we make sure no one cooperates. We already sent the message with Sal. Yeah. That's not enough. Lena looked around the room. We need to go after the source. Richard Whitmore has been feeding the FBI information for months, using my ex-husband as an unwitting spy. If we take him down, we cut off their supply line. Take him down how? Marco asked. The waterfront development. We don't just kill it. We destroy it so completely that Whitmore loses everything. His money, his reputation, his power. When the FBI sees their star witness bankrupted and disgraced, they'll realize their case is built on sand. That's going to take resources we don't have right now, someone pointed out. The feds froze most of our liquid assets. Then we use what isn't frozen. Dante pulled out his phone and started texting. I've got about 20 million in offshore accounts they don't know about. Lena? 15 million in my mother's trust. The FBI can't touch it. It's been held in an independent legal entity since before I was born. That's enough, Marco said, calculating. We can use that to buy out Whitmore's investors. Pay them more than the development is worth. Once they pull their money, the whole project collapses. Do it! Lena felt adrenaline surging through her veins. This was what her father had trained her for. Strategic warfare disguised as business. And leaked to the press that Whitmore's been working with the FBI. Make him toxic. No one will want to do business with a snitch. The room erupted in action. People making calls, setting up meetings, moving money through channels the FBI couldn't trace. Lena stood in the center of it all and felt something shift inside her. She wasn't pretending anymore. Wasn't playing a role. This was who she was. Who she'd always been. A Moretti. By morning, the first cracks started showing. 2 of Whitmore's major investors pulled out, citing concerns about the project timeline. By afternoon, the bank holding his construction loans called them due immediately. By evening, the City Planning Commission announced they were suspending approval pending further environmental review. Richard Whitmore's empire was collapsing in real time. Lena watched it happen from the safe house, tracking news reports and financial updates on multiple screens. Dante stood beside her, making calls, giving orders, orchestrating the destruction with surgical precision. He's ruined, Marco said, reading off the latest updates. Stock price is tanking. Business partners are distancing themselves. His wife filed for legal separation an hour ago. Good. Lena felt no sympathy. This man had used her pain as a weapon, had tried to destroy her family. He deserved everything coming to him. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Lena. It was Celeste. Her voice was shaking. We need to talk. About what? My father. Something's wrong. He's locked himself in his study. Won't come out. Won't answer anyone. I'm scared he's going to hurt himself. Lena's stomach twisted. Why are you calling me? Because you're the only one who can stop this. Please. I know what he did was unforgivable, but he's still my father. I don't want him to die. Lena looked at Dante, mouthed Whitmore. He shook his head. Don't do it. But Lena thought about Vincent, about losing him so suddenly, about never getting to say goodbye. She couldn't wish that on anyone, not even Celeste. Where are you? Celeste gave her the address. Lena hung up and grabbed her coat. You're not seriously going there, Dante said. I have to. Why? He tried to destroy us. Let him suffer. Because Celeste asked me to, and because Lena struggled to find the words. Because revenge stops somewhere, Dante. I've destroyed his business, his reputation, everything he built. That's enough. It's never enough. It has to be, or we're no better than the monsters they say we are. She left before he could argue further. The Whitmore estate was in chaos when she arrived. Security guards pacing nervously, staff whispering. Celeste met her at the door, her face blotchy from crying. Thank you for coming. Where is he? Second floor, study at the end of the hall. He locked the door hours ago. We've been trying to get him to respond, but Celeste's voice broke. I think he has a gun in there. Lena's heart started racing. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time, Celeste following. The study door was solid oak. She knocked. Mr. Whitmore, it's Lena Moretti. Silence. I know you're in there. I know you can hear me. She pressed her palm against the door. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. It's not worth it. Not worth it? Whitmore's voice came through muffled, broken. I've lost everything, my business, my reputation, my family, because of you. No. Because of your own choices. You tried to destroy my family. I just defended myself. By annihilating me. By beating you at your own game, Lena's voice hardened. You thought you could use my pain as leverage. Thought you could manipulate my ex-husband into being an informant without him even knowing. You played dirty, Mr. Whitmore. And you lost. So what now? You came here to gloat? I came here because your daughter asked me to. Because she's terrified you're going to blow your brains out and leave her with that memory for the rest of her life. Lena softened her voice. I lost my father 3 days ago. Don't make Celeste go through that. Long silence. Then the sound of a lock turning. The door opened. Richard Whitmore stood there looking 20 years older than he had at the gala. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were red, and yes, there was a gun on the desk behind him. You win, he said hoarsely. Is that what you want to hear? You win. The FBI case is falling apart without my testimony. My investors are gone. I'm bankrupt. You've destroyed me completely. So tell me, Miss Moretti, how does it feel? Lena looked at him and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. It feels empty, she said honestly. Revenge always does. Whitmore laughed bitterly. Then why do it? Because I had to. Because you left me no choice. She stepped into the study, very aware of the gun within his reach. You tried to use Adrian to destroy my family. You put your daughter in harm's way. You broke federal guidelines and violated the law. I didn't make you do those things. You chose them to protect my family, just like you're protecting yours. Then you should understand why I can't stop, why I can't show mercy. Lena met his eyes. But I'm here anyway, for Celeste, so you can choose right now. Put the gun away and face what comes next like a man, or take the coward's way out and destroy your daughter in the process. Whitmore's hand twitched toward the gun. Celeste made a strangled sound behind Lena. Dad, please! The moment stretched impossibly long. Then Whitmore's shoulders sagged. He walked to the desk, picked up the gun, and handed it to Lena grip first. Take it, before I change my mind. Lena took the weapon and emptied the chamber, pocketing the bullets. Then she handed the gun to Celeste. Get him help, she said quietly. Real help. Not just for this. For everything. Celeste nodded, tears streaming. Thank you. Lena left them there and walked back downstairs. Her hands were shaking. She'd just talked a man down from suicide. A man whose life she'd systematically destroyed. The cognitive dissonance was making her head spin. Her phone rang. Dante. Where are you? Leaving Whitmore's estate. I'm fine. Get back here now. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind involving FBI agents and arrest warrants. They're coming for everyone, tonight. Catherine just got the tip from a source inside the bureau. They're going to raid the safe house in... He checked his watch. About 20 minutes. Shit! Lena started running to her car. Get everyone out, now! Already in motion. Meet us at the backup location. She drove like a demon through downtown, running red lights, weaving through traffic. Her mind was racing. If the FBI took everyone into custody tonight, there'd be no one left to run the family. No one to keep people from flipping. It would be over. She made it to the backup location, an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, with 5 minutes to spare. Everyone else was already there, looking panicked and exhausted. Did we get everyone out? She asked Marco. Everyone except Tony. He was at his house. Wouldn't leave. Said he was too old to run anymore. God damn it. Lena wanted to scream. What about the files, the financial records? Burned. Everything at the safe house is gone. Good. Dante appeared from a back room carrying a laptop. But we have a bigger problem. I just got word from our contact at the courthouse. The prosecutor is offering plea deals to anyone who testifies within the next 48 hours. Full immunity, witness protection, the works. How many people are they talking to? At least 12. And that's just the ones we know about. Lena felt the ground shifting under her feet. They were losing control, losing the narrative, losing everything her father had built. We need to make a statement, she said. Something big enough that everyone remembers why you don't cross the Moretti family. Like what? Like showing up at Vincent's funeral tomorrow and daring the FBI to arrest us in front of the entire city. The room went silent. That's insane, someone said. That's exactly why we're doing it. Lena's voice was steel. My father deserves a proper funeral. And everyone needs to see that the Morettis don't hide, don't run, don't break. They'll arrest us the moment we show up. Let them try. We'll have so many witnesses, so many cameras, so many lawyers that they won't dare. And if they do, she looked around the room. We go down fighting. Dante studied her face for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was sharp and fierce. All right, let's give Vincent Moretti a funeral this city will never forget. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Lena dressed in black, a simple dress, conservative heels, her mother's diamonds. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw her mother looking back, strong, unbreakable, ready for war. The funeral was being held at St. Michael's, the old stone church where 4 generations of Morettis had been buried. Lena and Dante arrived in a convoy of black cars, pulling up to the church steps where hundreds of people had already gathered. Family, associates, reporters, FBI agents trying to blend into the crowd and failing. They stepped out of the car together. Cameras flashed like machine gun fire. Reporters shouted questions. The FBI agents looked nervous, hands drifting toward weapons. But no one made a move. Lena and Dante walked up the steps side by side, heads high, refusing to look afraid. The crowd parted for them. Inside the church, Vincent's casket sat at the altar surrounded by flowers. Too many flowers. The smell was overwhelming. Lena approached slowly, her legs shaking. This was real. Her father was really gone. She placed her hand on the casket and felt the wood cool under her palm. "I'm trying, Dad," she whispered. "I'm trying to hold it together like you wanted, but I don't know if I'm strong enough." Behind her, the church filled with people. The service began. The priest spoke words that meant nothing. People cried. Lena sat in the front pew between Dante and Marco and felt numb. Then it was time for eulogies. Marco went first, telling stories about Vincent's early days, how he'd built the family from nothing, how he'd protected everyone, how he'd been both feared and respected. Others followed, each one painting Vincent as a complicated man, loving father, ruthless businessman, loyal friend, dangerous enemy. Finally, it was Lena's turn. She walked to the podium on legs that barely held her. The church was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the back, FBI agents scattered throughout like hunters waiting for prey. She looked out at all of them and suddenly knew exactly what to say. "My father was a criminal." Her voice rang out clear and strong. "Everyone in this room knows it. The FBI knows it. I know it. He broke laws. He hurt people. He built an empire on violence and fear, and I won't stand here and pretend otherwise." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The FBI agents leaned forward. "But he was also my father. He raised me, taught me, loved me. And when I ran away from this life because I was scared and stupid, he waited 7 years for me to come home. Never stopped hoping, never stopped believing I'd find my way back." Her voice cracked. "So yes, he was a criminal, but he was also human, flawed, complicated, just like everyone in this room, just like me." She paused, gathering herself. "The FBI is trying to destroy everything my father built. They're offering deals, promising immunity, telling people that if they just testify, they can walk away free." She looked directly at the agents in the crowd. "But here's what they're not telling you. There's no freedom in betrayal, no safety in running, no future in forgetting where you came from. This is my father's legacy, and I'm going to protect it with everything I have. Not because I think what he did was right, but because he's family. And family doesn't abandon each other when things get hard." She stepped down from the podium. The church was absolutely silent. Then someone started clapping. Slowly. One person. Then another. And another. Until the entire church erupted in applause that felt like defiance. The FBI agents looked stunned. After the service, they buried Vincent in the family plot. Lena stood at the graveside and watched the casket being lowered into the earth. When it was over, when everyone else had left, she stayed there alone. "I meant what I said," she told the grave. "I'm going to protect what you built, even if it destroys me." "You're not alone." She turned. Dante stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I keep waiting for you to realize this is insane," she said, "that fighting the FBI is suicide, that we should just take a deal and disappear." "I'm not going anywhere." "Why not?" He stepped closer. "Because I waited 7 years for you to come back. And now that you're here, now that we're doing this together, I'm not walking away. Not for the FBI, not for anyone. Dante, I love you." The words came out simple, direct. I've loved you since we were kids, since before the arranged marriage, before you ran away, before all of this. And I'm done pretending I don't. Lena's breath caught. You can't love me. I'm a disaster. I've brought nothing but chaos since I came back. I know, I don't care. The FBI is going to destroy us. Then we'll go down fighting, together. He reached out and cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Lena closed her eyes and leaned into the touch. For just a moment, she let herself feel safe. Then her phone rang. Catherine. What? You need to get somewhere private, now. I just got the update on the FBI case. Catherine's voice was tight. They found something bad. Lena's stomach dropped. What did they find? Evidence that Vincent ordered 3 murders in the past 18 months. Wiretaps, financial transactions. They have everything. And the prosecutor is arguing that as the new head of the family, you're legally responsible for continuing the criminal enterprise. I just got back. I didn't order any murders. Doesn't matter. Under RICO law, you're liable for the actions of the organization you lead. Catherine paused. Lena, they're going to arrest you tomorrow. They have enough for a conviction. You're looking at life in prison. The world tilted. Lena grabbed Dante's arm to steady herself. There has to be a way out. There is, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Catherine took a breath. You testify. You give them everything on the senior members who are still alive. You expose the entire operation. In exchange, you get immunity and walk away. Betray my family. Save your life. Lena hung up, turned to Dante. The FBI has evidence Vincent ordered murders. They're going to arrest me tomorrow and charge me under RICO. I'm looking at life in prison unless I testify against everyone. Dante's face went white. What are you going to do? I don't know. Lena, I don't know. She was shouting now, all the pressure and fear and exhaustion breaking through. I don't know what to do. If I testify, I destroy everyone who's been loyal to this family. If I don't, I go to prison for the rest of my life for crimes I didn't commit. There's no good choice here. Then make the bad choice. Dante grabbed her shoulders. Make the choice you can live with, but make it fast because we're running out of time. Lena looked at him, at the man who'd waited 7 years for her, who'd stood beside her through everything, who loved her despite knowing exactly who she was, and she realized with sudden, terrible clarity what she had to do. Get everyone together, she said quietly. Everyone who's still free. I need to call a meeting, tonight. What are you planning? Something my father would never forgive me for. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd been avoiding. Special Agent Crawford answered on the second ring. Miss Moretti, I was wondering when you'd call. I want to make a deal. The meeting was set for midnight at a neutral location, an abandoned factory on the waterfront that neither the FBI nor the family used for operations. Lena stood in the empty loading dock, watching her breath fog in the cold air, waiting for Crawford to arrive. Dante was beside her. She'd told him what she was planning. He'd called her insane, suicidal, a traitor. Then he'd said he was coming with her anyway. You can still walk away, she said quietly. This doesn't have to destroy you too. We've been over this. I'm serious, Dante. What I'm about to do, it's going to make me an enemy to everyone. The family, the organization, everyone we've known our entire lives. You don't have to go down with me. He turned to look at her. His face was hard in the moonlight filtering through broken windows. Where you go, I go. That's how this works. Headlights appeared in the distance, 2 black SUVs rolling slowly across the cracked concrete. They stopped 20 feet away. Doors opened. Crawford stepped out, followed by Morrison and 3 other agents in tactical gear. Miss Moretti? Crawford's voice echoed in the empty space. I'm surprised you called. Yeah, well, life's full of surprises. You said you wanted to make a deal. I'm listening. Lena took a breath. This was it. The point of no return. Once she said what she was about to say, there was no taking it back. I'll testify. I'll give you everything I know about the family's operations. Financial records, business dealings, all of it. In exchange, I want full immunity for myself and Dante, and I want the charges dropped against everyone else. Crawford laughed. actually laughed. You want me to give up my entire case in exchange for your testimony? That's insane. No, it's strategic. Lena stepped forward. Your case is falling apart. Whitmore's credibility is destroyed. Your evidence is circumstantial. You need a cooperating witness from inside the organization, or you've got nothing. I'm offering to be that witness. In exchange for letting everyone else walk. Yes. Why would you do that? These people would kill you if they knew you were here right now. Because they're my family. Lena's voice was steady. And because the only crimes worth prosecuting died with my father, everyone else is just trying to survive. Crawford studied her face. You're lying. There's something else you want. He was smart. Too smart. There is, Dante said. We want Adrian Cross. Morrison frowned. The ex-husband? What about him? He's in the hospital right now, facing charges for attempted suicide and assault. We want those charges dropped. We want him released into our custody. Why? Because he's suffered enough. Lena's throat was tight. His life is destroyed. His career is over. He tried to kill himself. I don't need him rotting in prison on top of everything else. You want to show mercy to the man who betrayed you and used you and hit you in front of 200 witnesses, Crawford said slowly. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. Those are my terms. Crawford and Morrison stepped away to confer in whispers. Lena watched them, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Everything hinged on this moment. If they said no, she had nothing, no leverage, no plan, just a slow march to life in prison. Finally, Crawford came back. All right, we have a deal. You testify. We grant immunity to you and Dante and drop charges against the family members in custody. Adrian Cross gets released. He pulled out a document. Sign here. Lena took the pen with shaking hands. She stared at the paper. Once she signed this, she became exactly what every mob movie warned about. A rat. An informant. The lowest thing you could be in this world. But she signed anyway. The ink was barely dry when Dante's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen and his face went white. It's Marco. Don't answer. I have to. He stepped away and put the phone to his ear. Yeah? Lena watched his expression change. Horror, grief, rage. When? He asked. Then, how many? And finally, we're on our way. He hung up and looked at Lena. The safe house. The FBI raided it an hour ago. They arrested everyone who was there. But we moved everyone out. Not everyone. Tony was still there, and Marco's wife, and 3 associates who didn't get the message in time. Dante's voice was shaking. They're all in federal custody because we were here making deals instead of protecting them. Guilt crashed over Lena like a wave. She looked at Crawford. You said 48 hours. You promised we had time. I didn't make any promises. Crawford's face was impassive. My colleagues acted on the information they had. I can't control the timing of other operations. You set us up. The realization hit like a fist. You knew about the raid. You kept us here talking while they arrested everyone. I did my job, Miss Moretti, just like you're about to do yours. Lena lunged at him, but Dante caught her, held her back while she screamed obscenities that echoed through the empty factory. Crawford just stood there watching, unmoved. You have 72 hours to prepare your testimony, he said calmly. After that, we go to trial. Don't make me regret giving you this deal. They left. The SUVs pulled away, leaving Lena and Dante alone in the darkness. This is my fault, Lena whispered. I thought I was protecting everyone. Instead, I just made it worse. No. Dante grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. Crawford was going to raid that house regardless. At least this way we have immunity. We can rebuild. Rebuild what? Everyone's going to know I cooperated with the FBI. I'll be marked, hunted, dead within a week. Then we disappear. New names, new lives, somewhere far from here. I can't run anymore, Dante. I'm tired of running. Then what do you want to do? Lena looked out at the water, at the city lights reflecting on the black surface. She thought about Vincent, about the promise she'd made, about the empire she'd tried to protect. I want to burn it down, she said quietly. All of it. If I'm going to be a traitor anyway, I might as well make it count. The next 3 days were a blur. Lena met with prosecutors, gave depositions, handed over documents and recordings, and everything she knew about the family's operations. She watched as case files grew thicker, as more arrest warrants were issued, as the entire organization she'd tried to save crumbled piece by piece. Catherine called her a traitor to her face and quit. Gianna stopped returning her calls. Marco sent a single text message. "You're dead to us." The only person who stayed was Dante. On the fourth day, Adrian was released from the hospital into their custody. Lena went to pick him up alone. He was in a wheelchair, his legs still healing from the fall. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Fear, shame, confusion. "Why?" he asked as she wheeled him to the car. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because someone had to break the cycle." They drove in silence back to a hotel where Lena had been staying under an assumed name. Dante had arranged for a private nurse to help with Adrian's recovery. The whole setup felt surreal. Her ex-husband, the man who'd destroyed their marriage, who'd hit her, who'd tried to kill himself, now depended on her for survival. "I'm sorry," Adrian said when they got him settled. "For everything, for cheating, for lying, for hitting you, for all of it." Lena looked at him. Really looked at him. He was broken, physically, mentally. This man who'd once seemed so confident, so self-assured, was now just a shell. "I know," she said quietly, "but sorry doesn't fix anything. It just means you understand what you did wrong." "Do you hate me?" "No, I don't feel anything about you anymore, and that's worse than hate." She left him there and went to the window. Below, the city moved on like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. In a week, she'd become the head of a criminal empire, watched her father die, destroyed a man's career, turned informant, and saved her ex-husband's life. She was exhausted. Dante came in carrying takeout. "You need to eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." He set the food down and stood beside her. "Catherine called. The trial starts Monday. You're the prosecution's first witness." "I know. They're going to tear you apart on the stand. The defense attorneys are going to paint you as a liar, a criminal, someone trying to save herself by destroying others." "I know that too." "And there's a hit out on you." Marco confirmed it. $50,000 to whoever kills you before you testify. Lena closed her eyes. Of course there was. "How many people have taken the contract?" "At least a dozen that we know of." "Then I guess I better make my testimony count." The weekend passed in a haze of preparation and paranoia. Federal marshals moved them to a safe house. Prosecutors drilled her on questions. Dante barely slept, checking locks and windows compulsively. On Sunday night, Lena couldn't sleep. She got up and found Dante sitting in the kitchen, staring at his phone. "What are you looking at?" she asked. He turned the screen to show her. Photos of them from years ago, before she left. They looked so young, so hopeful, like they had their whole lives ahead of them. "I keep thinking about the life we could have had," he said quietly. "If you hadn't run. If we'd just accepted the arrangement and tried to make it work. Would it have worked? I don't know, but it couldn't have been worse than this." Lena sat down across from him. "Do you regret it? Everything that happened?" "Some of it. Not all of it." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I don't regret right now. Getting to be here with you. Even if it's temporary. Even if we're both about to die." "That's dark." "It's honest." He squeezed her fingers. "I love you, Lena. I've always loved you. And whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that." "I love you too." The words came out easier than she expected. "I fought it for years, told myself it was just the arrangement, just obligation. But it was always more than that." "Then let's make a promise." Dante stood up and pulled her to her feet. "If we survive this, if we somehow make it through alive and free, we disappear together. Find some place where no one knows our names. Start over. And if we don't survive, then at least we go down together." He kissed her. It was desperate and gentle and tasted like goodbye. Lena kissed him back and tried to memorize every second. The way his hands felt on her face, the sound of his breathing, the warmth of his body against hers. Whatever came next, she wanted to remember this. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Lena, dressed in a conservative suit, pulled her hair back, tried to look like someone the jury would believe. The federal courthouse was surrounded by security, news vans, protesters. The Moretti trial had become national news. She walked through metal detectors with federal marshals flanking her on all sides. Dante was somewhere behind her, separated for security reasons. Inside the courtroom, she saw faces she recognized, family members, associates, people who'd once called her boss now glaring at her with murder in their eyes. Marco sat in the front row. When their eyes met, he drew a finger across his throat. Message received. The prosecutor, Dietrich, stood up to begin. Your Honor, the people call Lena Moretti to the stand. Lena walked forward, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth, sat down in the witness box with her heart trying to punch through her ribs. Dietrich approached. Miss Moretti, can you state your relationship to the deceased Vincent Moretti? He was my father. And what was your father's occupation? He ran a criminal organization, racketeering, money laundering, extortion, murder for hire. The Moretti family controlled most of the organized crime on the East Coast. Gasps from the gallery. The judge banged his gavel. And you participated in this criminal enterprise? Dietrich asked. No, I left 7 years ago. Tried to have a normal life, but I came back recently after my marriage ended. And when you came back, did you assume leadership of the organization? Yes, along with Dante Moretti. Can you describe the structure of the organization, the hierarchy? Who reported to whom? Lena took a breath. This was it. The point where she betrayed everyone. Vincent was at the top. Below him were the senior members, he, Marco Gallo, Tony Romano, Sal Torino, and about 6 others. They controlled different territories and operations. Below them were associates, soldiers, people who did the actual work. And what kind of work was that? Running illegal gambling operations, loan sharking, protection rackets, drug distribution, money laundering through legitimate businesses. For 3 hours, she answered questions, laid out the entire structure, explained how money moved, how violence was authorized, how the family had corrupted city officials, judges, police officers. Every question felt like a knife. Every answer felt like a betrayal. During a break, she went to the bathroom and threw up, washed her face, stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, hollow, destroyed. When she came back, the defense attorney stood up for cross-examination. His name was Brennan, and he looked at her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Miss Moretti, isn't it true that you only returned to the family because your marriage failed? Yes. And isn't it true that you're testifying here today to save yourself from life in prison? Yes. So you're willing to say anything, accuse anyone, destroy any lives necessary to protect yourself? No, I'm telling the truth. The truth. Brennan laughed. Let's talk about truth. You married Adrian Cross under a false name. You hid your identity for 7 years. You lied to your husband, your friends, everyone in your life. Why should this jury believe anything you say? Because I have nothing left to lose. Lena met his eyes. I've already destroyed my reputation, my family, my future. I'm not lying to protect myself. I'm telling the truth because it's the only thing I have left. Very touching, but your testimony is conveniently timed, isn't it? Your father dies, leaving you in charge. You cooperate with the FBI. All the old guard gets arrested, and you and Dante Moretti get immunity and walk away free. Sounds like you orchestrated this entire thing. I didn't. No? Then explain how Richard Whitmore ended up bankrupt and his daughter's engagement destroyed right around the time you returned. Explain how your ex-husband ended up in the hospital after you exposed him at a gala. Explain how every enemy you had ended up destroyed or dead while you emerged unscathed. I was protecting myself by destroying everyone around you, just like you're doing now. Brennan turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman is not a victim. She's a manipulator, a liar, someone who will burn down the world to save herself, and the prosecution wants you to believe her. The cross-examination continued for 2 more hours. Brennan tore apart every statement, questioned every motive, made her sound like a monster. By the time it was over, Lena felt like she'd been flayed alive. When court adjourned, the marshals rushed her out through a back entrance. Dante was waiting in the secure transport vehicle. You did good, he said. I destroyed them, all of them. You told the truth. That's all you could do. They drove back to the safe house in silence. Inside, Lena collapsed on the couch. Her phone was buzzing with messages, death threats, dozens of them. People she'd grown up with promising to kill her in increasingly creative ways. She turned off the phone and closed her eyes. "I need to check on Adrian," she said. The nurse had set him up in a room upstairs. Lena knocked and entered. Adrian was sitting in bed, watching the trial coverage on TV. When he saw her, he muted it. "You okay?" he asked. "No. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about all of this. If I hadn't been so stupid, so desperate to climb the social ladder, none of this would have happened." Lena sat down in the chair by his bed. "You were just trying to survive in a world that values money over people. Can't really blame you for that." "Yes, you can. I cheated on you, lied to you, hit you. I deserve everything that happened." "Maybe. But I'm tired of revenge, Adrian. I'm tired of hurting people, even people who hurt me first." She looked at him. "When you're healed, you're going to leave here and start over somewhere new. The FBI will give you a new identity, a fresh start. Use it. Be better than you were." "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because someone has to break the cycle," she said again, "and it might as well be me." The trial continued for 3 more weeks. Witness after witness, evidence after evidence. The prosecution built an airtight case. The defense fought hard but couldn't overcome the mountain of testimony and documents. On the final day, the jury returned after 6 hours of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. For all defendants. Marco got 30 years. Tony got 25. Sal got life. The others got sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. The entire Moretti organization was dismantled in a single verdict. After sentencing, Lena and Dante were escorted out through underground tunnels. They emerged in a parking garage where a car was waiting. "Where are we going?" Lena asked the marshal driving. "Witness Protection Processing Center. You'll be there for about a week while we set up your new identities. Then you disappear." New identities, new lives, everything they'd been promised. But it felt empty. They spent the week in a sterile facility filling out paperwork and memorizing backstories. Lena became Sarah Mitchell, a freelance graphic designer from Oregon. Dante became James Cooper, a consultant. They were given IDs, credit cards, cash, and a rental property in a small town in Montana. "Montana," Lena said, looking at the documents. "Could they have picked somewhere more remote?" "That's the point," the case officer said. "Remote means safe. No one's going to find you there." On their last night in the facility, Lena couldn't sleep. She found Dante on the roof, looking at the stars. "Can't stop thinking about them," he said without turning around. "Marco, Tony, everyone we sent to prison. Me too." "Do you think we did the right thing?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if right exists anymore. We did what we had to do to survive. Whether that's the same as right," she shrugged. "I guess we'll spend the rest of our lives figuring that out. I thought it would feel different, being free, but it just feels lonely." "Yeah." They stood there in silence, two people who'd lost everything and gained nothing, staring at a future they didn't recognize. The next morning, they were driven to the airport, given tickets to Montana, handed over to new handlers who would ensure they reached their destination safely. At the gate, Lena turned back one last time, looked at the city skyline in the distance. Somewhere out there was the estate where she'd grown up, the church where her father was buried, the restaurant where she'd made her stand. All of it gone now. Erased, like she'd never existed. Dante took her hand. "Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They boarded the plane, found their seats. As they took off, Lena watched the city shrink beneath them until it was just lights on a dark canvas. Then even the lights disappeared. Montana was exactly as remote as promised. The town had 2,000 people, one grocery store, and more cows than humans. Their rental house was small but clean. 2 bedrooms, a view of mountains. Silence so complete it felt oppressive. They spent the first week setting up, opening bank accounts, getting local IDs, learning to answer to their new names. Sarah, James, 2 boring people with boring jobs living boring lives. It was suffocating. One night, Lena woke up screaming. Dante held her while she cried, nightmares of the trial and the arrests and her father's death tangling together into something she couldn't escape. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I can't pretend to be Sarah Mitchell from Oregon. I can't live in this tiny town where nothing ever happens. I can't breathe." "I know. Then what do we do?"
We survive, just like we've been doing, one day at a time.
Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, impossibly, they started to adjust. Lena got work as a freelance designer. Dante started consulting for local businesses. They made friends with neighbors, went to farmers' markets, adopted a dog. They played normal. 6 months in, Lena got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. It's Celeste. Lena's heart stopped. How did you get this number? I'm resourceful, and I needed to tell you something. Celeste's voice was different, harder. My father killed himself 2 weeks after the trial ended. Pills and whiskey, left a note apologizing for everything. I'm sorry. Don't be. He made his choices. A pause. Adrian's doing better. He's walking again. Got a job teaching at a community college under his new name. He asked me to thank you if I ever found you. You saw him? Once, before I left. I wanted closure. Needed to understand why he did what he did. Celeste laughed bitterly. Turns out there was no grand reason. He was just weak, and I was naive, and you were collateral damage. Story of my life. Yeah, well, I'm calling because I wanted you to know, and I don't blame you for any of it. You did what you had to do to survive. We all did. Some of us just did it better than others. What are you going to do now? Leave. Start over somewhere no one knows the Whitmore name. Maybe I'll find you in Montana someday. Have coffee. Talk about how we survived the worst year of our lives. I'd like that. Liar. But thanks for saying it. Celeste hung up. Lena stood holding the phone, thinking about all the people whose lives had intersected with hers. Adrian, Celeste, Richard Whitmore, even Crawford. They'd all been players in a game where everyone lost. That night, she told Dante about the call. You think she'll really leave us, Kate? He asked. I think she already has. People like us, we're good at running. Is that what we're doing? Running? No. Lena looked at him. We're starting over. There's a difference. What difference? Running is about escaping something. Starting over is about building something new. And what are we building? I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's ours, not Vincent's, not the family's, ours. A year after the trial, Lena got a letter. No return address. Just her new name on an envelope that had been forwarded through multiple locations. Inside was a single photograph. Vincent, younger than she remembered, standing with her mother on their wedding day. Both of them smiling like they believed in happy endings. On the back, someone had written, he was proud of you, even at the end, even when he knew what you'd have to do. M. Marco. Still alive somewhere, still watching, still part of the family even in exile. Lena put the photo on her nightstand. Next to it, she placed her mother's diamond necklace, the one thing she'd kept from her old life. Every morning, she'd wake up and see them there. Reminders of who she'd been, who she'd lost, who she was trying to become. 2 years in, Dante proposed. Not with a ring. Those could be traced. Just a question asked over breakfast in their tiny kitchen. You want to make this official? Get married for real this time? Lena looked at him, at this man who'd followed her through hell and out the other side, who'd given up everything because he loved her, who still woke up some nights with nightmares just like she did. Yeah, she said, I do. They got married in the courthouse with 2 strangers as witnesses. Sarah Mitchell married James Cooper on a Tuesday afternoon in Montana. It wasn't the wedding either of them had imagined. No family, no celebration, just paperwork and vows and the quiet promise to keep choosing each other. That night, they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Do you ever regret it? Lena asked. Everything we lost? Every day. Dante took her hand. But I'd do it again. All of it. If it meant ending up here with you. Even the prison? The trial? Watching everyone we knew go to jail? Even that. Because the alternative was watching you go to prison for life. Or watching you get killed in some FBI raid. Or losing you again like I did 7 years ago. He squeezed her fingers. I'd burn down 100 empires to keep you safe. That's dark. That's love. Lena leaned against his shoulder and watched the sun disappear behind the mountains. In the distance, she heard their dog barking. Inside, dinner was waiting. Tomorrow she had work to do and bills to pay and a life that belonged entirely to her. It wasn't the life she'd imagined, wasn't the empire she'd been born to rule, wasn't the revenge story everyone expected, but it was hers. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. 5 years after the trial, Lena was working in her home office when she got an alert on her laptop. A news story. She almost closed it. Then she saw the headline. Crime boss Marco Gallo found dead in federal prison, suspected suicide. She read the article with numb fingers. Marco had been found hanging in his cell. No note, no explanation. Just gone. She thought about the photograph he'd sent, about the fact that he'd tracked her down just to tell her Vincent was proud, about the weight of carrying that kind of loyalty into a cage. Lena closed the laptop and walked outside. It was snowing. Rare for this time of year, she stood in the silence and let the cold bite her face. Marco was dead. Tony would probably die in prison. Sal was already dead, killed by another inmate 2 years into his sentence. Everyone who'd been part of her father's empire was gone, erased, like they'd never existed. And she was alive. She'd survived, but survival had cost everything. Dante came out and wrapped a coat around her shoulders. You okay? No, but I will be. You always say that, because it's always true. Eventually. She turned to look at him. Do you think we did the right thing, in the end? I think we did the only thing. He pulled her close. Right and wrong don't exist in moments like that. There's just survival. And we survived. At what cost? At every cost. That's what survival means. They stood there in the snow, two people who'd traded an empire for freedom and still weren't sure if the exchange was worth it. But they were together and they were alive. And some days, that had to be enough. Inside, the phone rang. Dante went to answer it, came back looking shaken. That was Adrian, he said. What? He called. Don't know how he got the number. Said he needed to tell you something. Lena's heart was racing. What did he say? He's getting married, to someone new, someone kind. He wanted you to know he's happy, and he wanted to thank you for giving him a second chance. Lena felt something crack open in her chest. Not grief, not anger. Something softer. Relief, maybe. Or forgiveness. She wasn't sure anymore. Good, she whispered. That's good. That night, she dreamed about her father. They were sitting in his office at the estate. Vincent was smoking a cigar, looking at papers, completely alive. You did good, baby girl, he said, without looking up. I destroyed everything you built. I know. That's why I'm proud. What? Vincent set down the papers and looked at her. I built an empire. You built a life. One of those is more valuable than the other. Took me 40 years to figure out which. I miss you. I miss you too. But you're going to be okay. You're stronger than you think, stronger than I ever was. I'm not strong, I'm broken. Same thing sometimes. He smiled. Now wake up. Dante's making breakfast and it's probably terrible. Lena woke up crying. Dante was indeed making breakfast. It smelled like burning toast. She got up and went downstairs and kissed him, and didn't mention the dream. Some things were too precious to share. 10 years after the trial, Lena and Dante sat on their porch with coffee and newspapers. The town had grown a little. They'd bought the house. She'd published a novel under a pen name. He'd started a successful consulting firm. They had a life. There's an article here, Dante said, holding up the paper. Federal prosecutor Catherine Reeves died. Heart attack. She was 65. Lena took the paper and read the obituary. Catherine had gone on to bigger cases after the Moretti trial, had become famous for taking down organized crime, had never married, had died alone in her office, still working. She hated me at the end, Lena said quietly. She hated what you represented, not who you were. Is there a difference? I think so. I hope so. They were quiet for a while. Then Lena said, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd never left? If I just married you like everyone wanted and tried to make it work? Every day. And I think we would have killed each other, or the life would have killed us. We were too young, too trapped. We needed to break before we could heal. That's very zen. I read a lot of self-help books while you were gone.
Had to do something with my existential crisis. Lena laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange. Good. I love you, she said. I love you too. Even though you destroyed my family and turned me into a federal witness and forced me to live in Montana. I didn't force you. You're right. I chose this. I chose you. Best decision I ever made. They sat there as the sun rose higher and the day began and life continued in its relentless forward march. Somewhere in the past, there were bodies and trials and empires crumbling. But here, in this moment, there was just coffee and conversation and the quiet comfort of being known. It wasn't the ending either of them had imagined. Wasn't the revenge story. Wasn't the redemption arc. Wasn't even really a happy ending. It was just an ending, real and messy and imperfect, and that was enough. Because Lena had learned the hardest lesson of all. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. Justice doesn't erase pain. And destroying your enemies doesn't make you whole. The only thing that saves you is the choice to keep living, to keep trying, to keep building something better than what came before. Adrian had found peace teaching literature to college students who didn't know his past. Celeste had disappeared into a new life somewhere far away. The Moretti Empire had crumbled into dust. And Lena, once a Mafia princess, once a suburban housewife, once a crime boss, once a traitor, was now just Sarah, living in Montana with her husband James, writing novels and drinking coffee, and watching the seasons change. It wasn't power, wasn't glory, wasn't anything she'd been raised to want, but it was hers, built from the ashes of everything she'd lost. And that made it valuable in ways that empires could never be. The greatest revenge wasn't destroying Adrian Cross. It was becoming someone he could never deserve. It was choosing to live when dying would have been easier. It was building a life worth living even when the cost was everything she'd ever known. And in the end, sitting on that porch with Dante's hand in hers, and the mountains stretching endlessly before them, Lena understood the truth her father had tried to tell her in that dream. She hadn't destroyed his empire. She'd freed them both, and that was worth more than all the power in the world.